The secret language of the universe is flow. There is a pulse running through all things. It moves through galaxies. It hums beneath silence. It ripples behind genius and inspiration, behind moments of transcendent clarity and unstoppable momentum. This pulse is not metaphor. It's not imagination. It's real. It's measurable. And it responds to you. You've felt it before. In those rare, radiant moments when thought vanishes and something deeper takes over. When your words are effortless, your actions are flawless, your timing perfect. Athletes call it the zone. Artists call it the muse. Mystics call it divine inspiration. Neuroscience calls it flow. But what if that's only scratching the surface? This isn't just about performance. It's not just about creativity. This is a master key to a deeper structure of reality. Because what we call flow may actually be quantum coherence expressing itself through the human nervous system. And if that's true, if that's even possible, then flow is not just a brain state. It's a cosmic language, and you can learn to speak it. This video is not a motivational talk. It's not productivity advice wrapped in spiritual jargon. This is a full-spectrum map. Across the next hours, we're going to unravel the mystery of flow not as a mental trick, but as a doorway into a far larger intelligence. One that transcends space and time, yet moves through your body in this very moment. We're going far beyond popular psychology, beyond hustle culture, beyond creative hacks. You will understand flow as the felt experience of harmony between your individual frequency and the deeper architecture of reality. You will see how the brain's neuroelectric coherence mirrors the quantum alignment of subatomic particles. You will learn techniques to shift into flow on command. You will see how your mind is not generating ideas. It is tuning into them from beyond the bounds of space-time. You'll also learn how to ride this current as a lifestyle, how to build your day around it, how to recognize when you've lost the signal and how to regain it. You'll explore why some of the world's most groundbreaking artists, scientists, and visionaries speak of their breakthroughs as received rather than created. And you'll come to see yourself not as a separate observer, but as a participant in the universal broadcast. This is not about belief. You won't be asked to accept metaphysical dogma or follow esoteric rituals. Everything we explore will be grounded, physically, neurologically, energetically. But it will also expand your concept of intelligence. Because once you see flow not as a fluke, but as a frequency, everything changes. We will explore how group flow can merge individual minds into a single synchronized organism. We will see how trauma fragments this coherence, and how healing becomes possible through restoring flow. We'll look at whether flow can access data beyond linear time, whether it opens into something like the Akashic field, an information layer encoded into the structure of space itself. We'll even explore the possibility that human flow is the beginning of an evolutionary shift, not just in behavior, but in consciousness itself. Each part of this journey is crafted to reveal a layer. Each insight builds upon the last. Every technique is a portal, every practice a tuning fork. By the end, you won't just understand flow. You will embody it. You will carry it forward. And you will never look at creativity, intelligence, or reality the same way again. So let's begin where all flow begins. With recognition. Recognition that you've touched this frequency before, and it's been waiting for you to return. We begin with the secret language of the universe, and how it speaks in flow. Is reality actually surfable? Welcome to quantum surfing. Reality is not fixed. It moves, it bends, curves toward resonance. Most people experience life like a treadmill, constant effort, limited return. But those tuned into flow experience something entirely different. They don't push reality, carries them. They speak of uncanny timing, of being at the right place, saying the right thing, hitting impossible goals without burning out. Not by working harder, but by surfing the deeper rhythms of existence. This is not superstition. It's not fantasy. This is the core premise behind what we call quantum surfing, the skill of aligning with the underlying current of reality, so that it does the work for you. To grasp this, we must first throw away the idea of the universe as a dead machine. In traditional physics, reality is a cold mechanism, grinding forward in predictable laws. But quantum physics shattered that view. At the deepest layers, reality does not follow rigid rules, it follows probabilities. It behaves like a wave, not a clock. It responds to coherence. And flow, fundamentally, is coherence. Your thoughts aren't just firing neurons. They're shaping fields. Your emotions aren't just inner states, they're resonance signals. Every state you experience is like tuning a dial on a radio. Most people flip chaotically between frequencies. Flow is what happens when you lock onto the right one. Now here's where it gets fascinating. You don't have to force flow. In fact, the more you try, the less likely it is to happen. Because flow is a response to alignment. It is feedback from the universe that you're tuned into the right timeline, the right action, the right direction. This is why people in flow describe effortless success. It's not that they're not working, it's that their action is synchronized with a larger rhythm. Like a surfer catching a wave instead of paddling through crashing surf. Quantum surfing is about that synchronization. It's about learning how to feel when the wave is rising, and how to move with it before it breaks. Consider how often you've pushed, planned, overthought, only to hit a wall. And contrast that with those rare times when things just clicked. When calls came through without effort. When ideas poured in faster than you could write them. That's not coincidence. That's signal. And it's telling you something. Reality responds to resonance. Flow is not passive. It's not sitting back waiting for magic. It's an active sensitivity to rhythm. The surfer moves, but only when the wave invites it. Likewise, in life, your real power comes not from brute force, but from timing your actions with the invisible tides of energy around you. This is the first skill of quantum flow awareness. Not awareness of problems, but awareness of patterns, of signals, of subtle invitations. Now, as soon as you begin noticing these signals, something else appears. Synchronicity, moments where reality seems to arrange itself on your behalf. You think of someone and they call. You need an answer and it shows up, sometimes in a line of a book or a conversation overheard on the street. These aren't just happy accidents. They're markers of coherence. They are flow announcing itself in the physical world. Next, we will explore synchronicities not as superstitions, but as signatures, as the evidence that you're surfing the invisible structure beneath reality itself. Because once you can recognize synchronicity, you can learn to follow it, and when you follow it long enough, it stops being rare. It becomes your rhythm, your method, your map. Once the wave is felt, once that rhythm begins pulsing through your days, something else awakens. And for many, it's confusing at first, unnerving, too consistent to be random, too precise to ignore. These are synchronicities. Patterns that seem to emerge from nowhere, yet carry meaning far beyond their appearance. They're the moment you check your phone seconds before a forgotten friend calls. The time you stumble onto an obscure article that answers the exact question you were silently struggling with. The uncanny repetition of symbols, names, numbers, phrases. Each one is subtle, quiet, but insistent. And once noticed, they cascade. Most people dismiss these events. They don't fit into the conventional view of cause and effect. But flow doesn't operate inside that narrow framework. Flow speaks a different language, and synchronicities are the grammar of that language. The question isn't whether synchronicities are real. It's why they increase dramatically when you're in flow. The answer lies in coherence. When your internal state becomes harmonious, when your thoughts, emotions, and intentions are resonating on a unified signal, the external world begins to mirror that coherence. Not through magic, through alignment. Reality isn't just reacting to you. You're embedded within it. You are part of the field, not separate from it. So when your internal state becomes ordered, the field responds. It reflects that order. It organizes around you, and synchronicities are its reflection. They are signals of entrainment between your personal frequency and the informational structure of the universe. This is why synchronicities cluster in periods of clarity, creativity, and courage. They accelerate when you move in alignment with your deepest truth. When action and intuition become indistinguishable. When you're no longer forcing life to comply, but letting it respond. It's not that life suddenly becomes easier. It's that your actions now harmonize with unseen networks of information that move faster than logic. Synchronicity isn't about luck, it's about resonance. Let's be clear, this is not superstition. This is pattern recognition enhanced by expanded consciousness. The kind of pattern recognition that is heightened in gamma-dominant brain states, exactly what emerges in flow. When your brain enters high-frequency gamma synchrony, disparate networks communicate at lightning speed. Sensory data, memory, intuition, and emotion cross-link instantly. This is the neurological foundation for seeing patterns others miss, for connecting seemingly unrelated data points, for feeling that something is meant even before it's understood. And this is the secret of synchronicity. It reveals the underlying structure that was always there. You don't conjure it, you notice it, because now your awareness is tuned to the right frequency. This means synchronicity is not just a signpost. It's also a compass. It tells you when you're aligned. It gives you feedback in real time. Ignore it and flow begins to wane. Follow it and momentum accelerates. When you follow a synchronicity, you aren't chasing an outcome. You're moving with the current. And this is where most people get it wrong. They try to interpret every synchronicity. But flow doesn't always explain itself. It invites movement, not analysis. Trying to decode the meaning of every coincidence can collapse the experience back into ego. The mind wants control, but flow wants trust. The correct response to a meaningful coincidence is not, "What does this mean?" It's, "Where is this leading me?" There is a rhythm at work that logic cannot see. And those who surf that rhythm trust movement over certainty. So, the next time a coincidence appears, pause. Feel into it. Ask without grasping. Then act with precision. This subtle dance is what strengthens your sensitivity to the flow signal. And the more you respond, the more the field responds to you. You are not chasing flow. You are listening for its music. Synchronicities are the melody. And as you follow the melody, something remarkable begins to emerge. Ease. Not laziness. Not passivity. But effortless action. Next, we will go deeper into this paradox. Into the strange truth that mastery doesn't come from more control, but from less. That the most powerful force in your life may be the one you stop trying to direct. Control is the addiction of the rational mind. Plans, predicts, and pushes. It builds strategies, backup plans, and fallback positions. But for all its effort, the mind rarely achieves what the flow state delivers in minutes. Unbroken clarity, inspired precision, and spontaneous genius. This is the flow paradox. The more you try, the further it gets. The more you release, the more it arrives. In peak flow, action feels smooth, uninterrupted, intuitive, like you're not doing but being done through. Your timing is exact. Your body knows before your thoughts. Decisions make themselves. And the outcome, somehow, is superior to anything your logical mind could have engineered. It's not because you're being lazy. It's because you're being used by a deeper intelligence. That intelligence is not mystical. It's not separate from you. But it's also not the part of you that's obsessed with goals, metrics, and control. It's the part of you that feels timeless, wordless, the part that simply knows. This is the paradox of mastery. Great performers don't analyze in the moment, they surrender. Their preparation dissolves into presence. Their thinking dissolves into rhythm. This isn't unconscious behavior. It's superconscious operation. Effortless action is not the absence of discipline. It's discipline that has reached critical mass and vanished into instinct. It's the pianist whose fingers move faster than conscious awareness. The speaker whose words land before they're formed. The strategist who sees the entire board without calculating a single move. These are not lucky breaks. These are flow in motion. Now here's where the paradox sharpens. If you try to force this state, it vanishes. Flow resists willpower. It responds to trust. Control comes from fear. Fear that if you don't hold everything together, it will fall apart. But flow is the opposite. It's what happens when you let it fall and discover it's already held together by something smarter than fear. To truly enter the flow state, your ego must soften. This grip must loosen. This constant search for reassurance must quiet. And this feels dangerous because the ego believes control equals safety. But in truth, control often blocks brilliance. It narrows your options. It chokes spontaneity. It silences the intuitive signal. Letting go of control isn't abandoning responsibility. It's trusting the part of you that sees more, feels more, and connects more deeply with the field of intelligence that surrounds you. This is why flow often emerges in altered states, moments when the default mind recedes. It's why people access it during meditation, extreme sports, creative immersion, or even moments of crisis. In all of these, the normal structure of control collapses and something else flows in. That something is your deeper coherence with the universe. Flow is not about abandoning intention. Intention matters, direction matters, but once intention is set, flow begins when interference stops. Your role is not to push the process, it's to clear the channel. And that's where many people stumble. They think letting go means giving up, but letting go is not passive. It is a conscious release of friction, a letting go into something far more dynamic and alive than your linear mind could produce. It's accessing a state where life begins to move through you with intelligence, where your identity becomes less relevant, and your presence becomes radiant, where control dies and creativity begins. Now, you might ask, how do you know when you're in that state? The signs are unmistakable. Time disappears, effort collapses, results multiply, feedback aligns, synchronicities cluster, energy renews itself, and most of all, you don't feel like you're doing it alone. You feel carried, supported, moved. This is not wishful thinking. It's a nervous system operating at full coherence. It's your body, mind, and field becoming a singular instrument. And when that happens, intelligence flows not from effort but through clarity. This isn't theory. This is trainable, repeatable, observable. You can structure your life to support this state. You can recognize the early signs of control reasserting itself. You can create rituals that remove mental resistance. You can train your body and breath to become more receptive. And you can practice surrender not as a weakness, but as your greatest access point to genius. Next, we will break the myth that flow is random. Because now that you've seen how effortlessness works, it's time to learn how to enter it. On purpose, we'll unlock powerful rituals, hacks, and methods to trigger the flow response. Not someday, not occasionally, but right now on demand. Now that you've seen how flow speaks through signals and action without control, a deeper question arises. What's actually happening inside your body when you enter this state? Flow is not vague. It's not mystical fluff. It's a physiological, neurological, and energetic shift that can be measured with precision. It changes how your brain operates, how it synchronizes, how it communicates, how it collapses chaos into coherence. And the key to understanding this transformation begins in your brainwaves. Your brain operates in different frequencies depending on your state. These frequencies are not arbitrary. They're specific electrical rhythms created by neural activity. When you're alert, analytical, and focused, your brain is in beta. When you're relaxed or meditative, you move into alpha. Deep sleep plunges you into delta. But there's a rare, high-frequency band above all of these. A state of heightened awareness, total integration, and global connectivity. This is gamma. Gamma is not about stress or overactivation. It's not hyperactivity. It's harmony at high speed. It's when different parts of your brain begin operating as one unified system. In flow, gamma is the signal that tells us the brain is no longer fragmented. It's become a resonant field. In ordinary consciousness, the brain is noisy. Thought loops interrupt each other. Emotions clash. Internal dialogue competes with external perception. But during flow, gamma waves wash through the brain, bringing synchronization. Imagine multiple musicians playing different tunes. Now imagine them all snapping into the same key, tempo, and rhythm. That's what happens during gamma flow. Disparate parts of your brain, visual cortex, motor centers, language, memory, even the default mode network synchronize. And when that happens, a new level of intelligence becomes possible. You begin to experience thoughts and actions that are instantaneous, insights that feel downloaded, movement that feels choreographed by something beyond your conscious planning. Now here's the astonishing part. Gamma frequency isn't just faster, it's richer. Gamma waves integrate information across vast regions of the brain in milliseconds. This allows for moments of synthesis that defy ordinary logic. Artists report spontaneous breakthroughs. Scientists recall entire formulas arriving in seconds. Musicians describe playing notes they've never practiced. Entrepreneurs say ideas crystallize that would take weeks under normal thinking. This isn't hyperbole. This is flow through gamma coherence. Let's make this even clearer. When gamma waves dominate, time perception distorts. The internal critic vanishes. The sense of separation between self and task dissolves. This isn't imagined, it's the neural consequence of synchronized operation. And this synchronization is not just happening inside your skull. Gamma may also reflect alignment with the quantum field. Quantum physics tells us that at the smallest levels, particles behave like waves. These waves interact through resonance. When two systems become coherent, they amplify each other. Gamma may be the way your brain harmonizes not only with itself, but with larger energy fields that surround it. In other words, gamma is not just brain activity, it's your interface with non-local intelligence. People who meditate deeply, who enter states of awe, who experience profound insight or unconditional love, all show spikes in gamma activity. These are not passive states. They are high-integration, high-coherence experiences that reflect the same structure as flow. But unlike meditation or inspiration, flow adds something crucial: action. Flow is not just awareness, it's awareness in motion. And gamma is the bridge between stillness and movement. It connects the infinite with the immediate. So now the question becomes, how can you increase gamma activity? How can you train your brain to reach this state more often, more reliably? The answer is simple but powerful. You don't force gamma. You prime it. You prepare your nervous system for coherence. You reduce noise. You increase presence. You learn to feel when your actions align with your intention and when they don't. You cultivate a deep sensitivity to internal resistance and external flow. And when everything clicks into place, gamma rises. This is why trying harder doesn't work. Force fragments your brain. Effort disrupts synchronization. Flow is about tuning in, not turning up. In the presence of trust, alignment, and clear direction, your brain begins to fire as a whole. The left and right hemispheres stop arguing. The conscious and subconscious link up. Memory and motion become one system. And in that state, you are no longer guessing, you are receiving. This is not theory. This is repeatable, observable neuroscience. And once you've experienced this level of harmony, ordinary thinking feels noisy. You won't want to go back, because you've now tasted what it's like to operate as a coherent field, not just a mind in a body. Next, we will take this further. You've seen gamma in the brain. But now we expand that coherence to the entire body-mind system. Because the flow signal is not only electrical, it's electromagnetic. And the heart is the key. Everything you think, every emotion, every focus, every word, emits a signal. Not metaphorically, literally. Your body is not just reacting to thought. It is broadcasting it. When you enter a coherent brain state like gamma, your thoughts become more than internal narratives. They become energetic signatures, carried on electromagnetic fields that ripple outward. These fields don't end at the skin. They expand into space. They interact with other fields, other people, other systems, even the environment itself. This is where flow begins to interface directly with quantum principles. This is the convergence point between neuroscience and physics. And this is where we must rethink the very nature of intelligence. Let's start with the basics. Your brain and heart both emit measurable electromagnetic fields. The brain's field is detectable up to a few inches. The heart's field? It extends several feet beyond the body. But these are not static emissions. They are dynamic. They shift with your emotions, thoughts, and intentions. When you're in stress, the field becomes chaotic. When you're in gratitude, clarity, or deep focus, it becomes harmonious. And here's the key. When your internal state becomes coherent, your field becomes resonant. Resonance is not just stability. It's influence. It's the ability of your field to affect other systems, other minds, even probabilities. This is where your thoughts go beyond personal psychology. They become drivers of interaction at the level of information itself. Quantum mechanics reveals that particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously, until observed. Observation collapses possibility into one outcome. But what defines that observation? Just the eyes? Or the entire field of attention? There's growing evidence that intention and emotional state alter how systems behave. Not just perception. Outcome. This means your internal coherence, your flow, may be altering the way probability collapses around you. Not by breaking the laws of physics, by influencing which branch becomes real. Your thoughts, when coherent, are not just brain noise. They're directional fields. And when those fields align with the deeper order of the quantum substrate, events align. This may explain why flow creates synchronicity, why coherent states produce lucky breaks, perfect timing, serendipity. It's not luck. It's field interaction. It's neuroelectric resonance shaping local reality. Your nervous system, when coherent, becomes a tuning fork, and reality begins to vibrate in sympathy. This is why alignment feels so powerful, why congruence produces momentum, why clear intentions acted upon with presence seem to generate results that defy logic. Because your field is not passive. It's participatory. Let's now connect this with your experience. Have you ever had a moment where simply walking into a room changed its atmosphere? Where your calm shifted someone's stress? Where your idea seemed to unlock a collective insight? That's not charisma. That's field coherence. When you're in flow, your field stops broadcasting noise. It begins emitting order. That order affects the people, systems, and even decisions around you. This is not manipulation. It's alignment. And it only works when you're not trying to control it. Here's where it gets practical. When you set a clear, emotionally resonant intention and act in alignment with it, your field sharpens. When you maintain presence instead of drifting into fear or analysis, your resonance deepens. And when your thoughts, emotions, and actions become one frequency, the field around you begins to organize. Calls come at the right moment. Information arrives without searching. People respond without needing to be convinced. It's not supernatural. It's super coherent. This doesn't mean every wish materializes instantly. That's a distortion. Flow doesn't give you fantasy. It gives you alignment with the most congruent path forward. It reveals the real version of what you want, not the ego's projection. And because it's aligned, it happens faster, smoother, and with less friction. You don't push. You respond. You don't chase. You attract. You move through life as if something unseen is coordinating the next step, and you stop second-guessing that step. This is the power of flow through resonance. It's not about dominating reality. It's about harmonizing with its structure. You are not just a brain in a skull. You are a conductor of frequency. And flow is the moment when your frequency and reality's deeper patterns align. Next, we will bring in the heart, not as metaphor, but as the body's master field generator. Because now that you understand thought as signal, it's time to activate the system that governs coherence across your entire being. The heart is not an emotional symbol. It is the command center for embodied flow. You've seen how thought acts as a signal. You've witnessed the power of brainwave synchrony and gamma resonance. You now understand that the brain is not the entire command center, it's a processor, not a generator. But the real generator, the true engine of flow, isn't in the skull. It's in the chest, the heart, not as a poetic symbol, but as a real physiological system producing electromagnetic coherence across your entire body. It's time to go beyond brainwaves and understand how emotional alignment in the heart becomes the carrier wave for deep flow. The heart has its own nervous system, a complex, intelligent network of over 40,000 neurons capable of memory, pattern recognition, and information processing. It communicates with the brain through electrical signals, hormonal pulses, and energetic fields. But here's what matters most. When the heart enters a state of emotional coherence, especially through elevated states like appreciation, compassion, or inner peace, it generates a consistent, sine wave-like pattern in its rhythm. This isn't just good for your health. It's good for your consciousness, because that coherent heart rhythm sends signals to the brain that enhance gamma synchrony, optimize focus, boost intuition, and reduce internal conflict. When your heart and brain are in sync, something profound happens. You stop oscillating between thought and emotion. You stop struggling between logic and feeling. You enter a unified state. This unified state doesn't just feel good. It is the state that enables flow to lock in. Without it, flow can be glimpsed but not sustained. The brain may initiate coherence, but the heart sustains it. The brain sparks focus. The heart holds resonance. Let's go deeper. When you're in heart-brain coherence, your body systems align. Your breathing stabilizes. Your immune system strengthens. Your intuition sharpens. This isn't just spiritual suggestion. It's supported by decades of biometric data. Athletes in peak performance. Musicians in trance-like immersion. Negotiators in high-stakes clarity. These people often show high heart rate variability with smooth, wave-like rhythm patterns, a physiological hallmark of deep coherence. This smooth pattern is the body's signal that it's safe, aligned, and open. And when the body is in that state, the field around you becomes coherent. Remember, your body isn't isolated from space. It is influencing space. This is why elevated emotion is not just feeling good. It is flow's magnetic signal. The more deeply you embody these emotions, the more rapidly your thoughts align, the faster your actions crystallize, the clearer your intuition becomes. People who live in high heart-brain coherence describe the world responding to them in ways that seem uncanny. Meetings click, resources align, events unfold with improbable precision. This isn't coincidence. This is resonance through emotional stability. Now the question becomes, how do you train this? How do you access heart-brain coherence consistently? The answer begins with attention. Attention to breath, to feeling, to emotional feedback. When you consciously shift into appreciation, even for a few seconds, the heart begins to stabilize. And once it does, the signal to the brain changes. The prefrontal cortex opens. Decision-making improves. Inner conflict resolves. And the body's entire field expands. This shift doesn't require years of meditation. It requires presence, intention, and practice. A few minutes a day spent consciously breathing into your heart center, generating a sincere emotional state, can rewire your entire operating system. Now here's where it connects to flow. Flow is not just mental focus. It's a full-body frequency state. If your heart is incoherent, if your emotions are chaotic, your brain will never maintain gamma. Your intuition will never stabilize. Your actions will feel like effort, not emergence. But when your heart enters flow, your entire being locks into rhythm. And suddenly, inspiration isn't fragile. It's reliable. This is what makes true flow embodied. You don't just know you're in alignment. You feel it. In your chest. In your bones. In the room around you. You may even notice others calming when you're around. You may feel environments shift when you enter them. These are not accidents. These are field-based effects of embodied coherence. And they begin with heart-brain alignment. Next, we will go beyond the body. Now that you've aligned the mind and heart, it's time to question everything. Where is consciousness? Really? Because if flow emerges from coherence, perhaps consciousness isn't inside you. Perhaps you are inside it. If flow feels like something beyond thought, if it comes not from effort but from tuning in, Then a fundamental question emerges: what are you tuning into? We've spent centuries believing consciousness is generated inside the brain, that it's an emergent property of neurons firing in complex patterns, that you, the self, are produced from electrochemical activity in gray matter. But flow challenges that view, because in flow something shifts. The sense of I diminishes. Thoughts arise without origin. Insights appear fully formed. Time loses structure, and you become aware of a deeper intelligence that doesn't feel contained within your head. This experience is so consistent across cultures, disciplines, and histories that it can no longer be ignored. It points to a different model, one where consciousness is not inside the body, but the body is inside consciousness. This is not abstract philosophy. It is testable through experience. And flow may be the most direct way to test it, because in flow you stop thinking about presence. You become absorbed in it, and in that absorption, the illusion of separation fades. Think of your body as a receiver, your brain as a transducer, your heart as an amplifier. What they are receiving is not limited to memory or sensory data. They are receiving signal from a field that extends far beyond local perception. A field that contains information, intelligence, and potential not bound by your identity, your past, or your limitations. When you enter deep flow, it feels like you're connecting to something non-local, something impersonal but intimate, a knowing that precedes thought, an intelligence that doesn't need language. It simply moves through you. This suggests that consciousness doesn't arise from matter. Instead, matter arises from consciousness. Let's make this concrete. Have you ever had an idea that surprised even you? A moment where a phrase, solution, or insight emerged, and you had no clue how it formed? That's not you thinking. That's you receiving. That's your awareness interfacing with a larger field, then collapsing that potential into a usable idea. In quantum terms, this mirrors how particles behave. Until measured, they exist in superposition multiple states at once. Observation collapses them into one outcome. Similarly, consciousness collapses possibility into perception. But if you're not producing consciousness, then what are you? You are the instrument that tunes into it, and flow is the state where your tuning is most precise. This completely reframes genius. It's not the exclusive property of special minds. It's the byproduct of a well-tuned receiver. Flow turns you from a generator into a channel. And in that channel state, you don't own the brilliance. You transmit it. This explains why so many people describe flow as humbling. They don't feel pride, they feel awe, because they realize this intelligence is not theirs. It's through them, and that changes how you relate to your work, your purpose, your identity. You stop trying to build a brand of brilliance. You start cultivating alignment, because now you understand your best work doesn't come from pressure. It comes from precision. You don't push harder. You quiet the noise. You become sensitive to the field. And in that sensitivity, you begin receiving with clarity. This is why flow feels spiritual to some. Not because it involves dogma, but because it transcends ego. It shows you that the mind you thought was yours is part of something larger. And once that door opens, it doesn't close. You begin designing your life around access. You begin optimizing for receptivity. You choose work, routines, and environments not for control, but for coherence. And that coherence becomes your creative edge. Now the question becomes, how do you enter this state on demand? If flow is not random, if it's a field, you must learn to interface with it. Next, we will unlock specific methods, techniques, rituals that act as gateways. These are not magic tricks. They are signal enhancers, and with them, you will learn to open the channel whenever you choose. Flow doesn't wait for inspiration. It waits for readiness. You now know that flow is not created, it's accessed. It's not something you force, it's something you tune into. And tuning requires precision, sensitivity, preparation. This is where rituals matter. Not as superstition, not as productivity hacks, but as signal enhancers, as alignment tools, as flow primers. Rituals aren't there to impress flow. They're there to remove what blocks it. Because your nervous system is always listening. Every thought, every breath, every behavior is either aligning you or misaligning you. So the question becomes, what does your system need in order to become a reliable conduit for intelligence? The answer is rhythm. Your nervous system loves rhythm, craves stability. Predictable patterns signal safety, and safety is what allows deeper states to emerge. When your nervous system feels safe, it becomes receptive. When it's under threat, physical, emotional, or cognitive, it locks down. It hoards energy. It enters survival mode. Flow doesn't exist in that space. This is why the first function of ritual is to regulate, to bring order to chaos, to tell your body, you can relax. You're held. Now open. And once the body opens, the channel does too. Let's get practical. A flow ritual doesn't need to be long, but it does need to be intentional. A few minutes of stillness, a specific piece of music, a scent, a phrase, a movement, a breath pattern. When done with consistency, these elements act as neural keys. They unlock association. They signal, it's time. It's time to drop analysis, to release grip, to enter receptivity. This is where anchoring becomes a tool. Anchoring is the act of linking a physical or sensory cue with a desired internal state. Think of it as emotional conditioning, but for access, not control. By pairing a specific cue with flow repeatedly, the cue itself begins to open the door. Some people use a mantra, some light a candle, others stretch, pace, breathe, or write a single sentence in a notebook. The content doesn't matter as much as the consistency. Repetition wires association. But the deeper function of ritual is this: it bypasses the analytical mind. The mind that questions everything. The mind that doubts. The mind that demands certainty. That part of you cannot enter flow. So the ritual is your bridge from that mind to the one that knows how to let go. It's the bridge from noise to signal. Here's an example structure that works for many. Physical grounding: a few seconds of deep, diaphragmatic breathing while standing or seated. Focus cue: a sound, word, or gesture that you've used consistently to mark the start of flow activity. Emotional tuning: bringing to mind a moment of gratitude or awe, letting it fill the chest. Intentional declaration: a single sentence stating your aim or intention for the session. Clear, uncluttered. This primes all three centers: the body, the heart, and the mind. And when those three align, the signal becomes clear. You might feel energy rise. Times start to blur. Thoughts become more fluid. That's the doorway opening. But here's what you must understand. You are not commanding flow. You are preparing for it. The ritual isn't about results. It's about readiness. And sometimes the readiness is the result. The more you treat your ritual as sacred, not serious but sacred, the more your system will respond. Because flow responds to sincerity, to intention without tension, to presence without pressure. Eventually, the ritual becomes its own signal. Just hearing the first breath or saying the first word sends a cascade through your nervous system. It's time. Flow may not rush in every time, but you've cleared the static. And that clearing is your invitation. Next, we will take this further. You've prepared the portal. Now we activate it. Through breath. Breath is not automatic. It's electrical. It regulates emotion, alters brain chemistry, and shapes the energetic rhythms of your body. It is both the tuner and the transmitter. And when used consciously, breath becomes the fastest, most direct way to shift your state, to step out of control and into coherence, to bypass resistance and open the door to flow. This is not mystical. This is physiology. Your breath controls your nervous system. Your nervous system controls your access to flow. Let's start with a fact. Your inhale activates the sympathetic system, alertness, action, arousal. Your exhale activates the parasympathetic, relaxation, integration, safety. By consciously adjusting this balance, you control your readiness, your energy, your presence. The wrong breath locks flow out. The right breath invites it in. And among all breathing techniques, there is one pattern that accelerates access: rhythmic overbreathing, what some call controlled hyperventilation. This technique is powerful. It should not be taken lightly, but when used responsibly, it activates a deep shift in awareness. Here's the basic form. Inhale deeply through the nose. Exhale quickly through the mouth. Repeat rapidly for 30 to 50 breaths. On the final exhale, hold the breath out. Sit in stillness. Observe. What happens next is often surprising. As oxygen and carbon dioxide levels shift, your body enters a temporary altered state. The inner critic fades. Sensory data becomes enhanced. Emotional walls soften. And most importantly, the mind opens. Many describe a rush of clarity. Others experience waves of energy. Some receive images, ideas, or spontaneous emotional release. You are not hallucinating. You are tuning. Your chemistry is rebalancing. Your neural circuits are shifting. And the signal flow is coming through. This breath pattern mimics the physiological changes seen in deep flow. Lowered prefrontal activity, increased gamma, enhanced parasympathetic balance post-session. But the real gift isn't what you feel during the breath. It's what follows. After the cycle, when your breath stills, awareness expands. That's when the signal arrives. That's when flow moves in. Because now the noise is gone. The grip is loosened. The system is primed. This isn't about getting high. It's about getting clear. Too often, people chase intensity. But flow doesn't live in drama. It lives in depth. Controlled breathwork, when done without ego, provides that depth. And over time, your body remembers. Your nervous system begins to associate rhythmic breathing with access, with safety, with signal. Eventually, just a few rounds are enough to shift you in. And now you carry the doorway with you, everywhere you go. Let's talk safety and stability. This method should be used only when you're stationary, not while driving, not while multitasking. It should be treated as a gateway, not a gimmick, because it works, and what it opens is not always gentle. Stored emotions can rise, visions can surface, but this is not dysfunction, it's clearing. It's preparation for flow at deeper levels. When paired with the rituals you've already learned, breathwork becomes your amplifier. Turns intention into resonance. It transforms hesitation into readiness. It removes the friction between you and the signal. Flow is not a reward. It's a result. And breath is one of your purest, most primal tools to reach it. Next, we bring the breath into stillness. Because after activation comes receptivity. And in that receptivity, silence becomes the loudest voice. After the breath, after the movement, after the rhythm settles, something else enters. Silence. Not just the absence of sound. Not just quiet. True silence is not the lack of noise. It's the lack of interference. It is the frequency where everything becomes available and nothing is forced. And in the flow state, this silence is not optional, it is essential. Because in this silence, signal becomes audible. This is the moment when your body has prepared. Your breath has tuned the nervous system. Your focus has sharpened. Now, silence completes the circuit. You don't access flow through endless input. You access it through still receptivity. Most of the world is addicted to stimulation. Scrolling, reacting, multitasking. This mental noise doesn't just keep you distracted. It fractures your frequency. Every new input you react to creates a ripple. Those ripples crash into one another. Over time, they turn your internal field into static. Flow cannot penetrate static. This is why silence is not emptiness, it's calibration. It is the clearing of distorted waves so the coherent signal can pass through. Silence is the antenna raising itself above the chatter. Here's the truth. The signal of flow is always present. It does not turn on and off. You are not waiting for it. It is waiting for you to become available. And availability is created through stillness. When you create space between thought and action, a layer of consciousness emerges that your ordinary mind cannot access. This is where non-local intelligence begins to speak. Not loudly, not with fireworks, but clearly. The guidance doesn't always sound like words. It often arrives as feeling, as knowing, as direction without instruction. And this subtle form of clarity is often only possible when you are completely still. You've trained your breath. You've initiated your rituals. Now, to integrate it all, you must pause. You must allow silence to complete what activation began. There are two main forms of silence that trigger flow. 1. External silence, turning off devices, closing doors, isolating yourself from external input. 2. Internal silence, calming the inner narrator, releasing expectations, suspending analysis. Both are crucial, but the second is harder and more transformative. When internal silence is achieved, your attention stops jumping. It rests, and in that rest, awareness expands. You begin to feel connections that were invisible. You sense rhythms that were buried. Insight arises not because you sought it, but because you stopped chasing it. Stillness doesn't require hours. A few minutes of deep silence after breathwork is often enough to open the door. But here's the catch. You must treat that stillness with reverence. If you rush it, distract yourself, or mentally narrate your way through it, you break the circuit. Silence is not a passive gap between activities. It is a conscious space where real-time integration happens. When you enter that space intentionally, flow begins to recognize you as available. This is where the creative surge begins to form. The decisions you couldn't make begin resolving themselves. The energy you were chasing begins to rise naturally, because in stillness, there is no resistance. And where there is no resistance, flow takes root. Many people fear silence. They mistake it for emptiness, for boredom, for lack. But silence is none of those. Silence is full. Silence is alive. It is the place where your higher intelligence gathers its resources. Without silence, your mind is just echoing old data. With silence, something new can enter. So your job is simple: create space, then let go. Don't try to feel something. Don't try to hear something. Simply be still enough to allow what's already present to become visible. This is the moment you stop pushing and start receiving. Once you've accessed this inner quiet, your field begins to open. You will feel yourself becoming more aware of subtleties. The shift is not dramatic, but it's undeniable. Colors appear sharper. Sounds become more defined. Time becomes softer. And somewhere within that subtle shift, you begin to move not from thought but from impulse. And that impulse is pure flow. Next, we take that impulse and translate it into movement. Because flow isn't just an internal state. It must express itself. Now that silence has opened the portal, it's time to bring your body into the equation. Stillness clears the signal, but movement transmits it. You are not just a brain in a body. You are a full-spectrum instrument. And the body is not just a vehicle, it's a flow translator. Every gesture, every posture, every action carries a frequency. And when that frequency matches the flow state, something remarkable happens. You stop doing. You start being moved. This is movement as meditation, not repetition, not routine, but intelligent motion arising from coherence. Most people treat movement as output, as a way to burn calories, build muscle, or achieve a visible goal. But in flow, movement is not about effort. It's about rhythm, resonance, expression. The kind of movement that triggers flow is not mechanical. It is intentional, intuitive, and often spontaneous. Dancers know this. Martial artists know this. Musicians, athletes, even painters know this. There's a moment when the body begins acting on its own intelligence. The mind isn't giving orders. The body is channeling something deeper, and that channel opens when the body is trusted fully. To access this, you must change your relationship with your own movement. Stop controlling. Start listening. Start small, stretching, swaying, reaching. Allow movement to emerge from breath. Let breath set the pace. Let the heart lead the motion. Don't correct it. Don't critique it. Feel it. When you move without judgment, movement becomes language. When you let your body speak, flow answers. This is not about performance. It's not choreography. It's attunement. Here's what's actually happening. As you move with presence, your brain and body sync. The left and right hemispheres of the brain begin to harmonize. Your vagus nerve activates, enhancing parasympathetic balance. Your proprioception sharpens. You become aware of space, balance, subtle shifts in gravity. And most importantly, the boundary between self and movement begins to blur. This is when flow begins to take over. This is why movement-based rituals are powerful tools for creative breakthroughs. A walk taken without distraction, a slow, breath-led dance, a simple stretching session with complete awareness. These are not breaks from work. These are the work, because they open a frequency that no spreadsheet, no brainstorming, no thinking can unlock. The intelligence that moves through you when your body is flowing is often faster, smarter, and more connected than anything your verbal mind can produce. It's pre-verbal, preconceptual, but profoundly real. Let's talk about the practical forms this can take. Walking meditations, moving slowly without distraction, tuning into every footstep, every shift in balance. Freeform dance, not to perform but to explore, letting your body respond to music or internal rhythm. Somatic mirroring, allowing your body to respond to internal sensation, letting movements arise from emotion or intuition. Flow writing with movement breaks, combining mental creation with intervals of mindful movement to reset your nervous system. These methods are not exercises. They are bridges. They connect you to the full intelligence of your system, and they allow flow to move from potential into expression. Here's what you'll notice when this is working. You stop feeling clumsy. Your body starts to feel guided. You stop overthinking. Ideas begin arriving mid-motion. You stop planning. You start following a thread of intelligence that reveals itself step by step. This doesn't just apply to art or athletics. Even typing an email, giving a presentation, making a decision, when flow is active through your body, these actions gain precision, elegance, and power. Because the signal is no longer fragmented. It's full spectrum. You are now aligning every system, mental, emotional, physical. This is whole being flow. The nervous system is clear. The emotional body is open. The physical body is expressive. You are not getting into the zone. You are the zone. Next, we take this further. You've activated flow through body and breath. You've tasted silence, expression, movement. Now we explore how to unlock peak states without drugs, without risk, and without waiting. It's time for microdosed euphoria, induced entirely by your own neurobiology. You've learned to move with the signal. You've trained your breath to open the channel. You've entered stillness and let your body speak. Now the gateway opens wider. There exists a state of consciousness, expansive, vivid, and transformative, that many associate with psychedelics. But what if that state wasn't exclusive to substances? What if you could activate it naturally, intentionally, and safely using only your own neurobiology? You can. This is the art of microdosing flow, not through external chemicals but through internal chemistry. Let's begin with the goal. To access expanded awareness, heightened creativity, and deep pattern recognition, without losing control, without hallucination, and without dependency. This is not about mimicking drugs. It's about unlocking the state that substances imitate. That state is already built into your system, and it can be activated when the right physiological and energetic conditions are met. Let's look at what psychedelics do when they work effectively. They quiet the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for self-referencing, judgment, narrative, and control. They boost connectivity between previously isolated neural regions. They increase serotonin flow, dopamine release, and sometimes even oxytocin, leading to a state of trust, joy, creativity, and oneness. But your body can create all of that without the chemical. When you engage certain breath patterns, certain rhythmic movements, and certain meditative techniques, your brain begins to shift in the same direction. And this is where flow enters, not as reaction, but as access. Let's look at 3 primary mechanisms for natural flow-induced euphoria. 1. Hypofrontality, temporarily reducing activity in the prefrontal cortex, which allows intuition, emotion, and somatic intelligence to lead. 2. Neurochemical harmony, elevating serotonin and dopamine while calming cortisol and norepinephrine, creating a balanced state of arousal without anxiety. 3. Global connectivity, encouraging cross-communication between brain regions, including left and right hemispheres, emotional and rational centers, and memory and sensory data. Each of these is a doorway. Together, they simulate a psychedelic state, without the fog, without the crash, and without leaving your body. One technique is rhythmic breath and hold cycling combined with internal focus. It works like this: 30 to 40 deep rhythmic breaths. Hold the final exhale. Sit in stillness, eyes closed. Focus on your third eye or heart center. Let go of all agenda. You may begin to feel tingling, euphoria, lightness, or even spontaneous visuals. These are signs of altered awareness, not as escape, but as presence deepening. Another method, sonic entrainment, listening to specific binaural frequencies, particularly gamma and alpha blends, can create brainwave coherence that mimics psychedelic awakenings. When paired with slow, aware breathing, the mind expands naturally. And one more, somatic release through movement. Flowing, repetitive motion, especially with no external goal, triggers endorphin cascades and liberates stored tension. This unlocks states of clarity that feel otherworldly, yet are rooted entirely in the body. All of this is available without substances. Substances may offer a shortcut, but they also bypass the body's own intelligence. And they often come with instability. Microdosing flow naturally is not only safer, it's more sustainable. Because you're not borrowing energy, you're liberating it. And there's one key difference. When flow is accessed naturally, integration is immediate. The insights don't dissolve. They land. They stay. They guide. Because they didn't come from outside you. They came through you. This is the future of altered consciousness. Not escape. Not synthetic experience. But embodied transcendence. Accessible. Trainable. Repeatable. Once you experience it, you'll realize the state you were chasing was always encoded inside you. You just needed the right keys to unlock it. And now that you've touched that level of activation, next we will enter the download zone, where the ideas you've been waiting for begin to arrive. Not created, not imagined, but transmitted through you. Now that your system is clear, now that coherence is live and the signal is strong, something begins to happen that feels magical, but it's not magic. It's a download, not a thought you construct, not an idea you brainstorm, but a fully formed insight arriving whole, fast, and undeniable. This is the moment when the flow state shifts from activation to reception, and you stop being the thinker. You become the receiver. Let's clarify what a download really is. It's not a voice in your head. It's not imagination. It's the arrival of structured intelligence. Meaningful, complete, and instantly relevant. It could be a visual, a sentence, a knowing. It might appear as a full solution to a problem, or a design, a message, a piece of music, a phrase that carries power. And it does not come from your past. It comes through your alignment. The reason you can receive downloads and flow is simple. Your mind is no longer dominating. Your field is clean. Your attention is sharp. And you're in resonance with something larger than logic. In this state, you are not accessing memory. You are accessing the field. The field contains potential. Ideas not yet claimed. Solutions not yet identified. Patterns not yet perceived. When you are aligned, mentally, emotionally, physically, you become a conduit for that potential to express itself through form. This is why some of the greatest innovations, breakthroughs, and works of art came not from analysis but from downloads. They weren't forced. They were received. So how do you enter this zone reliably? The key is not seeking. The key is allowing. After breathwork, after movement, after stillness, when your nervous system is calm but awake, and your attention is steady but soft, you simply listen. Without expectation. Without effort, your job is not to chase. Your job is to hold space. Because when you hold that space long enough, the field responds. It fills that space with signal. Many people miss their downloads because they override them with thought. They question. They doubt. They rush to analyze. But flow doesn't work that way. The more you try to grasp, the more it slips. The more you relax, the more it arrives. And when it arrives, you'll know. Because it won't feel like you invented it. It will feel like it landed. Here are common sensations when a download is happening. A sudden inner quiet. A flash of insight with emotional certainty. Tingling or chills. A drop in perceived time. And this is it feeling with no explanation. These are not coincidences. These are signs that you are attuned. Now, downloads don't always arrive as complete answers. Sometimes they come as direction, a thread to follow, a question to explore, a symbol, a name. But when you follow that thread, the signal continues. And the more you honor it, the more it returns. To strengthen this capacity, practice these steps. 1. Prepare the space. No distractions. Phone off. Body calm. Breath steady. 2. Ask a clear question or set a clear intention. No clutter. No desperation. 3. Drop into awareness. Observe without forcing. 4. Capture the insight. As soon as it arrives, write it, speak it, record it, don't delay. 5. Act on it. Even a small action strengthens the channel. This builds trust, not just in yourself but in the field. And trust is the key to making downloads consistent. You are not inventing ideas. You are matching frequencies. Ideas exist as energetic structures. They seek resonance to express. When your internal state matches their structure, they connect. They flow through you. This is not mysticism. This is energetic alignment. The universe is not short on ideas. It's short on people who are available to receive them. When you train yourself to become available routinely, downloads stop being rare. They become your creative default. This is why many artists, entrepreneurs, and visionaries describe being guided. Because once the channel is open, and the signal is trusted, you begin to feel that something is working with you. Not just inside your mind, but through your life. And that presence, the intelligence behind the download, is not a fantasy. It's real. And it's now part of your process. Next, we will go even deeper. You've received the download. But now, who or what is speaking? Because once you start hearing the signal, you'll begin to wonder whose voice it actually is. You've entered flow. You've activated the download. The signal is flowing. Insight is landing. Now something unusual starts to happen. You speak, and the words surprise you. You act, and the results feel beyond you. You write, and it feels like the page is writing itself. You're not thinking anymore. You're transmitting. And now comes the deeper question. Is this you? Or is it coming through you? This is where we step into what has been called the phenomenon of channeling. A word often misunderstood, often mystified, but its core principle is simple. Channeling is what happens when personal identity steps aside, and a deeper intelligence uses your system to express itself. You don't have to be spiritual to experience this. You don't need to be a medium, a mystic, or a guru. Channeling is not rare. It is not elite. It's simply flow in its most transparent form. It's what flow becomes when the ego is entirely silent. This happens to artists all the time, to speakers, writers, composers, leaders, healers. There's a moment when they begin to speak, and something changes. The cadence sharpens. The presence expands. The content elevates. They're no longer editing themselves. They're not even thinking about what comes next. It's just moving. This isn't performance. This is transmission. They may not know what they're going to say until they say it. But what they say lands with precision, power, and often deep resonance with others. It's because the I that normally filters expression is gone. And what remains is signal. So let's understand what's happening behind the scenes. In a true flow state, the prefrontal cortex quiets. The default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for self-referencing, goes offline. Judgment, hesitation, and inhibition drop. At the same time, other regions, emotional centers, motor control, language networks light up in synchrony. Creativity rises. Intuition activates. But most importantly, the idea of I begins to dissolve. You don't feel like the author. You feel like the instrument. This is where the experience of channeling begins. And it's more common than most realize. Now, there's a distinction to be made here. Some traditions define channeling as communicating with spirits or entities. But what we're referring to here doesn't require metaphysical belief. It requires availability. Whether you interpret the signal as coming from your higher self, the quantum field, collective intelligence, or simply subconscious integration, it doesn't matter. What matters is the experience. And that experience is unmistakable. You stop controlling. You start transmitting. Here's what it often feels like. You speak or write faster than usual. You lose track of time. You don't know what's coming next, but it feels perfect. You sense that you're plugged in to something beyond the moment. You finish and don't entirely remember how it happened. This isn't fantasy. This is your system in full coherence. Flow moving through a cleared channel. And when you become consistent at entering this space, you stop doubting the voice. You start trusting it, because you realize it always delivers. Now let's talk about how to enhance this. You don't need to force the state. You need to protect the space where it happens. Create windows in your day where you're undistracted. Choose tools that don't interrupt you, pens, not just screens. Speak out loud when ideas feel stuck. Let sound become a trigger for signal. If you're writing, don't edit. Don't look back. Just let the stream flow. If you're speaking, don't try to impress. Speak like the words are coming from somewhere just behind you. That slight sense of elsewhere is a clue that you're not manufacturing thought, you're transmitting it. Over time, you'll recognize the voice, not by its tone, but by its clarity. You'll feel when the ego is talking, and you'll feel when flow is moving through. The ego pushes. Flow reveals. The ego performs. Flow communicates. The ego wants to be heard. Flow wants to speak what must be said. And the more you honor that signal, the more often it visits. Eventually, it doesn't visit. It lives in your system, because you've become the channel. And that's the shift. You're no longer accessing flow as a special state. You're beginning to operate from it by default. Next, we explore the deeper archetype behind this experience, the source from which channeling draws. It's not a person. It's not a persona. It's a presence. It's the muse. You've experienced flow as a signal. You've felt it move through your system. You've let go, spoken, and watched brilliance land on the page or from your mouth without effort. Now we approach the presence behind that brilliance, not as metaphor, not as mythology, but as real, felt intelligence. This is what poets have called the muse, not a person, not an identity, a frequency, a precise, high-coherence vibration that carries beauty, structure, clarity, and revelation. And when you are tuned correctly, it finds you. Across cultures and millennia, the muse appears. In Greek mythology, she's a goddess whispering verses to poets. In Renaissance art, she's the angel guiding the hand of the painter. In indigenous ceremonies, she's the ancestor spirit speaking in visions. But in every case, she is not the creator. She is the channel of inspiration. And this is what flow makes possible, not only as peak performance, but as a relationship with that frequency. When you are in sustained flow, the muse becomes accessible. And when you are ready to serve, not impress, she speaks. Here's the truth no one tells you about creativity. You are not making anything. You are receiving, organizing, and expressing. The muse sends signal. Your body and mind translate it into form. When you try to own the idea, the muse vanishes. When you offer yourself as a clear channel, she returns. The muse doesn't respond to pride. She responds to availability. So how do you stay available? You practice emptying. You clear your inner space of judgment, ambition, comparison. You stop trying to be original and start trying to be accurate. You ask not, how do I impress? But, what wants to be expressed through me? And then you listen. You write. You paint. You speak. You build. And if the signal is clean, she stays. Now let's go deeper. The muse doesn't only give you content. She gives you structure. She delivers rhythm, proportion, emphasis. She shows you how to craft, not just what to say. She is intelligence in its most aesthetic form, and her signature is unmistakable. When the muse is present, there's elegance. Not just clarity, elegance. Ideas fall into place. Words land on the beat. Movement becomes meaningful without explanation. You don't force transitions, they arrive. You don't write to impress. You write because you have to. This is not discipline. This is devotion. The muse does not respond to chaos. She responds to coherence. When your mind is still, your heart is open, and your body is listening, she shows up. And here's the secret most people miss. She wants to work with you. She is not playing hard to get. She is not random. She is consistent if you become consistent. Make space for her daily. Even if she doesn't speak the first few times, wait for her like she's worth waiting for. Because when she speaks, your work becomes alive. You've probably already felt her. In the middle of a phrase that arrived whole. In a movement that felt choreographed by something deeper. In the sudden insight that completed your work. That's her signature. And she doesn't stay long if you try to control her. But if you follow the signal, if you protect the channel, if you serve the work instead of performing it, she returns. And with her, flow becomes sacred. Not just efficient, not just focused, but aligned with something eternal. Next, we will take this relationship and make it personal. Because now that you know the muse speaks through coherence, it's time to ask, what's your signal? What frequency is yours to live by? Because your genius isn't hidden. It's encoded, and it's waiting for you to unlock it. The muse speaks, the download lands, flow carries you, and now a realization begins to form. A sense that what you're channeling isn't random. It's you. Not the version of you that's shaped by conditioning. Not the version built by approval, achievement, or memory. The real you. The signal beneath the story, the original frequency that carries your genius, is not created, it's uncovered, and the only reason it ever seemed missing is because you were tuned to someone else's signal. Your signature frequency is not an idea, it's not a personal brand, it's not your strengths or skill set, it's a pattern of resonance that flows through every authentic expression you've ever made. It shows up when you're not trying to be anything. It reveals itself when you stop copying, competing, or conforming. It's that strange combination of clarity and excitement that arrives when you speak without pretense, write without editing, build without apology. That feeling is not coincidence. It's your frequency coming online. The truth is, genius is not rare. What's rare is coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, actions, and intentions operate in harmony, your signature frequency shines through. And when that happens consistently, people notice. They call it talent. They call it charisma. They call it originality. But what they're really responding to is resonance. Your signal activating something in them. This is why imitation fails. Because no matter how impressive someone else's system, if it's not aligned with your frequency, it blocks the channel. You may succeed externally, but internally, something disconnects. The signal weakens. The muse goes quiet. Flow becomes effort. Because you're not living your signature. You're performing someone else's. Your system knows the difference. And it will only reward alignment. So the question becomes, how do you identify your frequency? The answer is not conceptual. It's somatic. It's energetic. It's emotional. You don't figure it out. You feel it. And when you feel it, you anchor it. Every time you act from that place of deep recognition, the pattern gets stronger. The signal becomes clearer. Your nervous system begins to expect it. Eventually, your genius stops being a mood. It becomes your normal. Let's go deeper. Your signature frequency is a specific combination of rhythm, language, energy, and perception that no one else carries in the same configuration. You may share traits with others. You may even have similar interests, but your pattern, how your intelligence expresses when unhindered, is as unique as a fingerprint. It's not just about what you do. It's about how you move when you're aligned. And that movement leaves a trail, a recognizable, repeatable signal. To strengthen that signal, ask yourself, when do I feel most clear? When do I feel most alive? When do I feel least self-conscious and most accurate? What patterns show up when I'm not trying to perform? What feedback do I consistently get when I stop overthinking? These moments are not random. They're your genius peeking through. When you document them, honor them, and act on them, you begin tuning your system to receive that signal more often. And over time, you build a life around it. You're not trying to be the best. You're learning to be the most you. And that's where genius lives, not in effort, but in coherence. Once you know your signature frequency, every decision becomes easier. You stop asking, what should I do? You start asking, does this strengthen the signal? That's the filter. That's the compass. That's the guide. And the more you honor that guide, the more the universe responds. Opportunities begin aligning with your real direction. People begin responding to your clarity. Resources show up because now you're magnetizing, not forcing. This is quantum coherence at work. Internal alignment produces external acceleration. Not because you're lucky, but because you're finally tuned in. Next, we bring this tuned frequency into lifestyle design. Because your genius isn't just something to access in creative bursts. It's something to live. And now that you've felt the signal, it's time to make flow your foundation. You've touched the signal. You've heard the muse. You've moved with downloads, intuition, and precision. But these moments, no matter how powerful, can fade. And that raises the next challenge. Can flow become your baseline? Not a peak experience. Not an accident. But a consistent, integrated way of living? The answer is yes, but only if you stop treating flow as a special event. It has to become your environment, your schedule, your rhythm, because flow isn't just a mental state. It's an operating system. To live from flow means restructuring your life around coherence. It means removing what blocks the signal and building rituals, relationships, and rhythms that keep it active. This is not about optimization for productivity. That's surface level. This is about energetic architecture. It's about designing a life that tunes you in and keeps you there. Let's start with the biggest truth. Your system already knows how to flow, but most people live in constant interruption, constant reaction. Their environments, tools, calendars, everything is designed to split their attention. And split attention equals split signal. If you want to live in flow, you must stop designing your life for management and start designing it for momentum. This begins with space. You need time where you're not reactive, where the phone is off, where the inputs stop, where your energy resets. You also need cycles. Flow moves in waves. If you ignore the wave, if you grind through it, you miss the window. So your calendar, your tasks, your commitments, they must serve the rhythm, not fight it. Here's a practical model. Activation window, the time of day when your signal is strongest. Protect it. No meetings. No scrolling. No fragmentation. Use it for high-impact flow activities. Recovery window. Space for stillness, breath, silence. Not optional. This refuels the system. Connection window, group coherence. Collaboration, conversation, shared intention. Flow magnifies when resonance is shared. Integration window, reflect, capture insights, and rest. Without this, flow becomes noise. Your day is no longer a to-do list. It's a sequence of resonance chambers. And when these chambers are aligned, flow becomes default. You don't chase peak states. You maintain a peak environment. You begin curating the people you allow near your signal, the foods that support your clarity, the music, lighting, and textures that lift your frequency, the tech you use, and when you use it, the boundaries you enforce, not out of restriction, but protection of signal. This is energetic hygiene, because once you've tuned yourself to receive, the last thing you want is to let noise back in. You'll begin to notice how certain conversations pull you out, how certain habits flatten your coherence, how your body responds when you're out of rhythm. And you'll course correct, not because of discipline, but because of sensation. Flow becomes the felt standard. Anything less feels off. Eventually, your life stops being divided between work, rest, and growth. It becomes all flow. You wake up and tune in. You eat to stay clear. You speak from resonance. You create with clean signal. You rest with intention. You serve from overflow. This is not about becoming superhuman. It's about becoming natural again. It's about remembering how to live without fragmentation. Now one final key. To live in flow, you must honor the void. There will be days where nothing flows, where silence speaks, where direction pauses. This is not failure. This is part of the wave. Honor the stillness. Let the channel rest. And protect that rest as fiercely as you protect productivity. Because in the silence, the next wave is forming. And when it rises, you'll be ready to ride it because your life is now structured for signal, not noise. Next, we map this structure into a daily, replicable routine. Because now that flow is your lifestyle. It's time to make it non-negotiable. You've begun living the signal. You've made space. You've felt your genius rise. Now it's time to architect your days. Not around to-do lists or productivity hacks, but around the energetic pattern of flow itself. This is the flow map. It's not a calendar. It's a rhythm. It's the structure beneath spontaneity. The blueprint that allows your system to stop guessing and start responding. Fluidly, intelligently, consistently. Because when your day supports the wave, you stop chasing alignment. You ride it. Let's begin with this truth. Every human system operates on cycles. Biological, emotional, cognitive. These cycles vary slightly per person, but the patterns are universal. You are not designed to grind for 8 hours straight. You are designed to pulse. And each pulse has a sequence. Preparation, activation, peak, transition, recovery. Ignore this and your signal drops. Honor this and you access flow not once but multiple times per day. The key is knowing when you're primed for which part of the wave. This is what the flow map reveals. Start with your chronotype, your natural rhythm. Are you a morning creator? A midday problem solver? An evening strategist? Flow requires you to stop fighting your natural energetic timing. When are you most mentally clear? When do you feel physically restless? When does intuition sharpen? When do you crave solitude? These aren't trivial preferences. They're entries in your energetic logbook. Track them, not with apps but with awareness, and begin building your flow map around those high-resolution moments. Here's a powerful daily structure many high-flow individuals use. 1. Entry phase. Morning alignment. Duration. 30 to 60 minutes. This is the ignition. You're not jumping into work. You're tuning in. Practices include stillness or breath work, movement without goal, stretch, walk, sway, gratitude or coherent heart focus, vision anchoring, not goals, states. This is not optional. It's the calibration that sets your day's resonance. Skip it and you carry distortion into every decision. Honor it and you activate coherence early, before the world pulls at your attention. 2. Core phase. Deep flow window, duration. 90 to 180 minutes. This is your sacred creation time. One task, one focus, no interruption. Could be writing, designing, solving, recording, strategizing. Whatever it is, this window is guarded. No phones, no meetings, no notifications. Full signal. Flow enters here by invitation. You've done the prep. Now the muse moves. Most people scatter this window with admin, errands, social scrolls. That kills the wave. Your job. Protect it like it's the rarest part of your day, because it is. 3. Integration phase. Energy reset. Duration. 20 to 45 minutes. Flow isn't permanent. The nervous system needs rest. But don't numb out. Use recovery to realign. Walking, music, light movement, hydration, solitude, silence. Avoid dopamine flooding here. No intense news, scrolling, or noise. This pause isn't indulgent. It's the necessary silence between notes in the song. 4. Response phase. Output plus connection, duration variable. Once you've created from alignment, now you shift to interaction. Respond to messages. Collaborate. Review. Do this after, not before, your deep work. Why? Because every interaction with others pulls on your signal. Handle these activities from overflow, not depletion. That changes the energy completely. 5. Evening phase. Return to stillness. Duration. 60 to 90 minutes. Don't collapse into sleep. Transition into it with intention. Evening flow includes light reflection, journaling insights, slow movement or stillness. No intense stimulation, especially blue light. Let the field integrate what you've created. The brain processes in sleep what you structured in wakefulness. Close the signal softly, not abruptly. This flow map isn't rigid. It's adaptive. The more you use it, the more you fine-tune it to your own signal. But the principle remains. Catch the wave, ride the peak, restore, then reset. And when this cycle is honored daily, flow becomes expected, not elusive. You stop scheduling around urgency. You start scheduling around frequency. Next, we explore what happens when this cycle compounds. Because when you flow consistently, something strange and powerful starts to occur. The more you enter it, the more it pulls you in. You've mapped your day. You've caught the wave. You've entered the signal more than once. And now something begins to shift. Not just in your performance, but in the very texture of your life. It begins to feel easier. Not because the world changes, but because you've stopped fighting the current. This is the experience of quantum momentum, a self-reinforcing acceleration that compounds every time you re-enter flow. It's not linear, it's exponential, and it's real. Here's what starts to happen. Your nervous system recognizes the frequency. The channel opens faster. The resistance drops quicker. The feedback loop becomes tighter. And each time you align, the next alignment requires less effort. This is not wishful thinking, it's a neurological pattern. Flow increases myelination. It strengthens neural pathways between coherence-related brain regions. It doesn't just feel smoother, it is smoother. You've carved a new channel. Now the energy flows there by default. Think of it like this. The first time you access flow, it's like cutting a trail through the forest. Thick, slow, hard to navigate. But every time you walk that path, it clears. Eventually, it becomes a road, then a highway, until one day you're just there. No machete, no struggle, just movement. That's quantum momentum. Here's where it gets even more powerful. Quantum systems behave differently than linear systems. In linear growth, more effort equals more result. In quantum flow, more coherence equals disproportionate result. One aligned action can create 10 ripple effects. One resonant decision can collapse weeks of friction. One moment of signal can attract what months of pushing could not. This is what people call luck, breakthrough, synchronicity. It's none of those. It's resonance amplified by repetition. Now you begin noticing patterns. Ideas arrive before you ask. The right people reach out. The money flows more consistently. Decisions feel instant and accurate. Energy stays high without being forced. Recovery happens faster. And perhaps most importantly, you stop burning out. Why? Because flow gives energy. Push takes it. When you're in alignment, you don't drain, you charge. This is what allows high-performing individuals to sustain output that others find impossible. They're not grinding. They're surfing momentum. And this momentum builds across more than days. It builds across your identity. You begin seeing yourself differently, not as someone chasing productivity, but as someone carrying a frequency. You become known not just for results, but for presence. People feel your coherence. They trust your timing. They sense you're tuned in. Because you are. Now this momentum doesn't mean you won't hit obstacles, but it changes how you move through them. In a push-based system, resistance stops you. In a flow-based system, resistance redirects you. You become agile, not rigid. Creative, not reactive. And in time, you begin expecting solutions even before they appear. Because now you trust the field. You've lived the feedback loop. This is when flow becomes more than a state. It becomes stability. Not because you've mastered everything, but because you know how to return. No matter what knocks you off, you know the way back. That confidence is unshakable. And it transforms how you lead, create, relate, and live. Next, we face what happens when momentum meets resistance. Because the path is not always clear. And when flow disappears, many give up. But you won't. You'll know exactly why it vanished and how to recover it. By now, you've experienced the rhythm. You've built momentum. Flow no longer feels elusive, it feels available. Then something shifts. You miss a step. Your energy drops. The clarity dims. The signal weakens. You try to recover it the same way you did before, but it doesn't respond. The rituals feel flat. The music doesn't inspire. The practices you trusted now feel mechanical. It's frustrating, confusing, even disorienting, but it's not failure. It's feedback. Flow hasn't abandoned you. Something is in the way, and this chapter is about discovering what that is. First, understand this. The flow signal is always present. It hasn't turned off. It hasn't been taken. It hasn't disappeared. You've just become temporarily misaligned. And flow cannot travel through distortion. Just as light bends through broken glass, the signal warps when internal conflict arises. The issue isn't access, it's interference. This interference takes very specific forms. And once identified, it can be cleared. Here are the most common inner blockers that disrupt your ability to maintain flow. 1. Subtle expectation. You've done the work. You've tasted flow. You begin expecting it to show up. The moment you begin expecting, you introduce pressure. Pressure collapses presence. Expectation is not the same as openness. Openness allows. Expectation demands. And flow never obeys demands. It follows alignment, not entitlement. 2. Hidden tension. You may not even notice it. A slight clench in your jaw. A tightness in the chest. A looping thought playing under the surface. Even small, background tension distorts the signal. Your body is the antenna, and if the antenna is physically strained, the broadcast quality drops. Tension is not the enemy. It's a messenger. It's pointing you to something that's unresolved. 3. Unprocessed emotion. Flow requires emotional transparency. When you suppress or ignore a rising emotion, anger, sadness, fear, you build a barrier in the channel. Unprocessed emotion doesn't just live in your story. It vibrates in your field. You don't have to solve every emotion. You just have to feel it cleanly without judgment. When the emotion is witnessed, it passes. When it's resisted, it blocks. 4. Misaligned action. You can't maintain flow if you're moving in a direction that contradicts your intuition. Even if it looks smart, even if others approve. Flow is highly sensitive to alignment. And when your action is out of sync with your signal, your system knows. It tightens, it dulls, pulls energy away, and flow becomes silent. 5. Disconnection from body intelligence. You've been so focused on thought, strategy, decision, direction, that you've forgotten the body. The body carries the signal. The body speaks first. Ignore it and flow has no place to land. Reconnect. Move. Breathe. Feel. Flow is not conceptual. It's somatic. So how do you clear these blocks? You don't attack them. You listen. You create space not to solve but to notice. Here's a simple practice. Sit. Breathe slowly. Ask gently, What is here that I haven't felt? Wait, let the answer rise through sensation, not thought. You're not trying to fix. You're trying to reopen the channel. That's what flow requires. A body and mind willing to be honest. Sometimes the block is temporary, a misstep, a brief disconnection. Other times it reveals something deeper, pattern, a belief, a wound. That's not a setback. That's a gift. Because flow isn't just performance, it's a healing signal. When you lose it, you're being shown where coherence is still waiting to be restored. This is the invitation, not to hustle harder, but to tune deeper. And as you begin to see these blocks for what they are, not enemies but invitations, you stop panicking when flow fades. You get curious. You shift from judgment to signal tracking. And in that curiosity, flow returns. Not through effort, through permission. Next, we face the most persistent of all signal distorters. The one that looks like intelligence, but kills coherence faster than anything else. It's not resistance. It's overthinking. You've seen how overthinking unplugs the signal. You've experienced how a single moment of surrender can unlock clarity, momentum, even genius. But still, something lingers. That part of you that hesitates. That voice that second-guesses. That feeling in your gut that whispers, what if this isn't real? What if this isn't safe? Fear. Not loud. Not chaotic. Subtle. Persistent. Is not blocking flow by accident. It's doing it on purpose. Because fear is not just a reflex. It's ego protection. Let's understand this clearly. Your ego, the mental structure that defines you, was built for survival, not coherence. It exists to manage identity, preserve safety, predict outcomes. And in its original role, it was useful. But flow requires you to surrender the exact mechanisms ego depends on. It requires you to release control, prediction, performance, certainty. To the ego, this isn't uncomfortable. It's a threat. And so the moment you start to enter flow deeply, effortlessly, beautifully, powerfully, the ego panics, throws fear at you, not because it hates flow, but because it doesn't exist inside flow. This is why doubt increases after moments of deep insight, why fear arises after creative breakthroughs, why resistance spikes right before aligned action. It's not bad timing. It's the ego realizing it's about to be eclipsed, and it will do anything to survive, including dressing up fear as logic, dressing up doubt as realism, convincing you that slowing down is smart, that waiting is wise, that now is not the time. This isn't guidance. It's ego sabotage. Here are the most common signals of ego resistance. A sudden lack of clarity after clear direction. Emotional discomfort that spikes right before aligned execution. New distractions that seem urgent but are actually irrelevant. The return of old patterns at moments of creative expansion. Feeling exhausted without having moved. These are not random. These are signs that the ego has identified a threat to its dominance. And that threat is you, living free. But here's the deeper truth. The ego can't actually stop flow. It can only convince you to step away from it. It uses your fear of the unknown. It weaponizes your craving for control. But once you see it for what it is, its power collapses. You don't need to fight the ego. You need to recognize it and choose differently. So how do you move through fear without letting ego take over? You shift where you're speaking from. The ego speaks about you. The soul speaks through you. One is concerned with outcome. The other is concerned with alignment. When you catch yourself hesitating, ask, is this fear mine? Or is it a defense mechanism trying to survive a state it can't control? That moment of inquiry breaks the loop. It doesn't eliminate fear. It relocates your awareness. And that shift makes space for flow to re-enter. You'll find that fear doesn't actually block you. Hiding from fear does. The moment you feel it fully, without narration, it dissolves. Because most fear is anticipation, not reality. It lives in the story, not the moment. And flow lives only in the moment. So the question isn't how to avoid fear. It's how to move while not obeying it. That's the liberation flow offers. This is where identity transformation happens. Not because you built a better self, but because the self stopped defending itself. You no longer act from ego architecture. You act from alignment. You no longer need to prove. You only need to transmit. And fear becomes nothing more than an echo, one you no longer listen to. Next, we go even further into the root frequency behind all resistance. The trauma signal, the ancient tension still buried in the body, the final interference in your ability to maintain uninterrupted flow, and how to transmute it, cleanly, permanently. You've confronted the ego. You've seen how fear operates as a defensive code. But beneath even that structure lies something older, something more primal, less verbal, deeper than thought, stored experience, unprocessed memory, emotion frozen in time. This is trauma, and whether large or subtle, it creates a distortion field, one that interrupts your ability to stay in flow, not by intention, by inheritance. Let's clarify something first. Trauma is not the event. It's what remains after the event. It's the unresolved energy, the defensive posture, the nervous system's memory of being unsafe. And even if the story is gone, the signal is still active. This is why people can be intellectually brilliant and still emotionally blocked. Why your thoughts can be clear, but your body still resists movement. Why flow can feel near but inaccessible. Because trauma doesn't live in your mind. It lives in your field. And that field creates static. When you enter alignment, trauma flares. Not to punish you, to be seen, to be felt, to be released. This is why many people cry during breathwork. Why anger surfaces during movement. Why shame shows up during breakthroughs. It's not a breakdown. It's a purge. And when you allow that purge without story, the signal clears. And what was once a block becomes fuel. Flow and trauma operate on the same channel. One is coherence. The other is interference. And your nervous system constantly oscillates between the two, until one becomes dominant. So healing is not separate from flow. Healing is part of flow, because true flow doesn't bypass wounds. It carries the energy to resolve them. You've probably already felt this. That moment when expressing something real unlocked tears, joy, clarity, laughter, all at once. That wasn't confusion. It was integration. Your body rejoining the signal it had been separated from. Because trauma creates fragmentation, and flow restores unity, not just in thought, in self. Let's be clear. You don't need to rehash every story. You don't need to analyze the past. You need to recognize when the trauma signal is interrupting the now, and meet it not with resistance, with witnessing. Breathwork, somatic release, EMDR, inner child integration, these aren't side tools. They are flow recalibrators. They give the nervous system permission to shift from protection to participation, and that shift is the foundation of true coherence. So how do you know when trauma is interrupting flow? Here are the signatures. Sudden collapse in energy during expression. Emotional spikes that don't match the moment. Overreactions to small stimuli. Patterns of self-sabotage right after progress. A persistent feeling that something is off no matter what you do. When you notice these, don't panic. Don't label them regression. See them as surfacing. The signal is working. It's exposing what needs release, not to harm you, but to clear the channel. This is why people feel more emotion, not less, when they start accessing deeper flow. It's not a mistake. It's a return. Your system is remembering what it feels like to not defend itself. And as those defenses soften, stored pain rises, only to leave. If you allow it, if you trust the process, if you keep breathing through it. You are not broken. You are resonating. And as flow stabilizes, those fragments return to place. And what once felt like sabotage becomes your superpower, because once healed, that energy becomes available for creativity, for clarity, for contribution, not as compensation, as pure signal. Flow is not just the state of genius. It is the state of wholeness. And healing is not a side effect. It is the proof that the signal is real. Next, we expand again, out of the personal and into the collective. Because now that you've stabilized your own coherence, it's time to feel what happens when multiple systems sync. And flow stops being individual. It becomes shared intelligence. You've now seen what it feels like to enter flow alone, to quiet the noise, to clear the channel, to become a vessel for coherence. But what happens when more than one person enters that state? Simultaneously, when multiple individuals synchronize, not through force, not through planning, but through presence, something extraordinary begins to occur. Flow becomes collective, and intelligence becomes shared. This isn't metaphor. This is a real, measurable shift that occurs when minds, hearts, and nervous systems synchronize. You've felt glimpses of it before. In a conversation where ideas seem to unfold effortlessly. In a performance where timing and intuition merged seamlessly. In a meeting where the team spoke less, but understood more. That was group flow. And when nurtured, it doesn't just enhance performance. It amplifies intelligence. Let's get specific. Group flow is a state in which a collective of people enters synchronized presence, aligned intention, and real-time feedback, resulting in outcomes greater than the sum of individual inputs. It's not brainstorming. It's not collaboration in the traditional sense. It's coherence. Not everyone talking louder, but everyone listening deeper. When a group enters flow, several things happen. Verbal communication becomes secondary. Emotional resonance becomes primary. Roles dissolve. Hierarchy fades. Time compresses or elongates. Innovation emerges without planning. Disagreements soften not from conformity, but from mutual clarity. The group moves as if guided by an invisible conductor. Ideas arrive that no one person thought of. Solutions form that feel inevitable. And after it ends, no one can quite explain how it all happened. Because it didn't happen from them. It happened through them. This state is not reserved for mystics or artists. It's present in elite sports teams, improv troupes, jazz bands, creative workshops, startup teams, sacred ceremonies. Wherever presence deepens and trust replaces ego, group flow becomes possible. But it's not guaranteed. It must be invited. And that invitation begins with coherence. Here's what makes group flow possible. 1. Shared intention. A group must have a clear, aligned focus. Without it, the signal fragments. With it, the channel amplifies. 2. Safety and trust. Flow cannot enter a room full of fear. When people feel seen, safe, and valued, they open. When they open, coherence begins. 3. Reduced ego. There must be room for listening, for surrender, for stepping aside. When performance drops, transmission rises. 4. Presence-driven dynamics. No rigid scripts, no forced agendas. Structure may exist, but it adapts to what wants to emerge. These aren't strategies. They're preconditions. And when met, the group doesn't just connect. It becomes one mind. You can feel the shift when it happens. Silence becomes charged. Ideas come not from one person, but from the field. People finish each other's sentences, not to interrupt, but to complete. The room breathes as one. And after it's over, the group looks around in stunned recognition. We didn't make that. It made us. But here's the most important part. Group flow is not just a performance enhancer. It's a blueprint for how humans are meant to relate. The illusion of separation dissolves. The boundaries between me and you soften, not into sameness, but into synergy. And what emerges isn't compromise. It's genius. Now that you've seen what happens when a group becomes one channel, let's go deeper into what that shared intelligence really is, and how it points to something beyond collaboration. Something hive-like, something evolutionary. Something profound begins to happen when group flow stabilizes. It's no longer just smoother communication. It's not simply aligned decisions or mutual resonance. It's a complete shift in cognitive architecture. The group starts thinking not together but as one. And the intelligence that emerges feels foreign, precise, almost non-human in its elegance. This is not just connection. This is the hive mind effect. In nature, we see this pattern everywhere. Birds in murmuration, schools of fish evading predators with uncanny coordination, ant colonies optimizing resource distribution without a central planner, bees collectively sensing and relocating to new environments. They don't meet, they merge. Their coherence creates collective intelligence, a form of genius that exceeds individual capacity. And humans are capable of the same. When presence deepens and ego relaxes, the mind stops needing control, and something else starts thinking through the group. This is not science fiction. This is quantum biology meeting advanced social dynamics. Studies on high-performing teams, elite military units, musical ensembles, and creative collaborations reveal a consistent pattern. When synchronization occurs, performance surges, but so does innovation. People report, knowing what others are about to say, feeling a shared energy guiding the group, experiencing ideas downloaded into the collective field, sensing shifts in direction before they're verbalized. A loss of individual authorship without losing identity. This isn't mystical. It's coherent data processing. Think of it this way. Each person's nervous system is a processor. When coherence is present, the processors sync up, reducing latency and redundancy. Each person accesses a broader field of intelligence, not just their own memory, but collective insight. And because there's less resistance, more alignment, and zero ego interruption, the signal accelerates. This isn't brainstorming, it's channeling, at scale. And here's where it gets truly wild. The hive mind doesn't think more. It thinks fewer but better thoughts. It doesn't operate through volume. It operates through resonance. What emerges is higher quality, cleaner architecture, and more robust solutions. Because there's no competition. There's only completion. Everyone contributes not by trying to stand out, but by listening to what the field requires. That shift from contribution to attunement is the turning point. Now let's be practical. How do you create conditions for the hive mind to emerge? You begin with individual coherence. Then you introduce synchronized practices, such as shared breath before meetings, unified intentions spoken aloud, silence before ideation, moving as a group before speaking as individuals, eye contact and emotional transparency, listening circles where speech is uninterrupted. These are not rituals for show. They are neurological alignment practices, and when used consistently, they shift the group from dissonance to resonance. And resonance is the threshold. Once crossed, the hive mind takes over. In this state, leadership looks different. It's not about command. It's about capacity to hold field integrity. The best leaders in hive mind conditions are those who maintain coherence even under pressure, speak with precision, not volume, sense the group's energetic state and adapt without ego, know when to guide and when to get out of the way. This is why some of the world's most powerful breakthroughs happen in circles. Not pyramids, not hierarchies, but resonant, synchronized circles of awareness. The hive mind doesn't scale through authority. It scales through alignment. Now here's the evolutionary piece. As group flow becomes normalized and hive mind intelligence becomes accessible, human systems begin to transform. You don't need rigid roles. You don't need endless meetings. You need alignment. When teams operate from flow, outcomes happen faster with fewer errors and more joy, because everyone feels heard. And no one is trying to be right. They're just listening for what's true. This isn't utopian. It's available now, but only to those willing to drop the performance, drop the ego, and serve the field. Because when you do, the hive begins to think through you, and what it creates is beyond what any individual could ever build alone. Next, we explore the deepest place this shared coherence can go. Love, intimacy, creation between two beings whose flow fields have merged. Flow not just as state, but as relationship. You've witnessed what happens when minds synchronize in a team, when presence becomes shared, when words become optional. Now let's go somewhere even more potent. The arena where synchronization becomes embodiment, where flow isn't just mental alignment, but emotional resonance, not shared performance, but shared presence. This is where flow enters the realm of love, intimacy, and co-creation. You may have felt it before, that moment when you're with someone and the world fades. Time slows, you're not talking at each other, you're moving with each other. A kiss feels like ceremony. A glance carries volumes. Ideas are birthed through conversation so fluid, you lose track of who said what. That's not chemistry. That's relational coherence. Flow in the field of intimacy. True intimacy, whether romantic, platonic, or creative, requires more than connection. It requires coherence between systems. Your nervous system, there's operating in real-time resonance. It's not about liking the same things. It's about being attuned to the same signal. And when that happens, the space between you becomes more than interaction. It becomes transmission. Let's get clear. Love, in its deepest form, is not emotion. It's frequency alignment. And when that frequency is honored, not forced, not manipulated, not strategized, something sacred activates. The flow between two people becomes a third intelligence, a shared field that neither controls but both feed. It moves as if guided. It reveals, teaches. It opens dimensions that neither person could access alone. This is why some relationships accelerate your evolution, why others drain your signal, because flow is sensitive to resonance. When two systems support each other's alignment, growth happens at warp speed. But when one system is chaotic, fearful, or ego-bound, it pulls the other out of flow. This doesn't mean perfection. It means mutual willingness to stay in coherence, to speak truth even when it trembles, to listen fully without fixing, to breathe together, not just to calm, but to connect. Here's the secret to deep flow in love. It's not about more communication. It's about less interference. You don't need to analyze every feeling. You need to feel them together. You don't need endless conversation about dynamics. You need shared silence where the truth can rise between you. In the deepest intimacy, flow emerges not from effort, but from safety. And safety doesn't mean comfort. It means truth without punishment. In romantic relationships, sexual flow is an expression of this same coherence. When bodies synchronize beyond performance, when energy moves without agenda, when presence becomes the only goal, the act becomes channeling. Orgasm becomes release not just of tension but of identity. It becomes a portal, a sacred wave, a surrender of separation into unity, not as metaphor, but as frequency. In creative partnerships, the same principle holds. You don't just work together. You channel through each other. You hear the idea at the same time. You speak in rhythm. You make space for the unspoken. And what gets created isn't just a product. It's a field artifact, a record of flow shared. So how do you increase flow in your closest connections? You don't start by talking more. You start by clearing interference. Presence. Put away the device. Turn off the world. Be here. Breath. Synchronize breath. A few minutes in rhythm softens the field. Eye contact. No agenda. Just witnessing. This calibrates trust. Honest emotion. Speak what's really there. Even if it's messy. Stillness. Don't fill every space. Let the silence speak. These practices aren't mystical. They're neurological recalibration tools. They signal to your partner, you're safe. I'm here. Let's sync. And when you do that consistently, something beautiful begins. Flow becomes the norm. You stop solving relationship problems. Because there are no problems. Only signals to track. You stop clinging to the person. Because the field between you becomes so nourishing, the connection sustains itself. And you stop fearing change. Because flow-based intimacy evolves as you do. It's not about holding on. It's about tuning in. Next, we'll leave the interpersonal and enter the transpersonal. Because now that you've tasted shared flow, the next level is calling mystical flow. Flow that opens not just creativity, but time, memory, and cosmic intelligence. You've been moving through wave after wave of coherence. You've felt your own signal stabilize. You've synchronized with others. But now something deeper begins to whisper. What if the ideas you're accessing, the insights, the downloads, aren't being created? They're being remembered because they already exist, somewhere beyond time, somewhere beyond thought. Welcome to the concept of the Akashic field. Let's begin with what this field is. Not a metaphor, not mythology. A real quantum possibility proposed by cutting-edge theorists, mystics, and metaphysical scientists. The Akashic field is understood as a non-local energetic archive of all experiences, patterns, and intelligence, past, present, and potential. A kind of cosmic database that consciousness can access when tuned to the right frequency. And flow, especially deep flow, is that frequency. This explains why musicians write symphonies they don't remember composing. Inventors receive blueprints they can't trace back to thought. Writers produce entire books that feel like dictation. Sages speak wisdom that transcends their education. They're not creating from scratch. They're tapping a field. And flow is the passcode. When you enter deep flow, especially after emotional coherence, silence, or altered states, you temporarily lift your awareness from localized mind. You stop thinking from your personal identity and start receiving from the field. What you receive may feel alien at first, not because it's foreign, but because it's not from the mental self. It's a signal tuned beyond ego, beyond time, beyond personality, and that's why it feels like remembering. So where is this knowledge stored? In the energetic blueprint of the universe itself. Physics has long hinted that information is never lost, only transformed. From particle to wave, from thought to energy, from event to pattern. And the Akashic field is the cumulative resonance of those patterns. It's not a place, it's a frequency tier. And when you're in flow, you enter it naturally. This explains the phenomena of precognition, spontaneous wisdom, artistic inspiration that feels ancient, emotional knowing that has no mental source. In the Akashic field, you are not the author. You are the antenna, and the signal you're tuning into is not new. It's always been here, waiting for the right resonance to bring it through. How do you increase access to this level of flow? You can't force it, but you can prepare your system. Cultivate silence. Akashic flow does not compete with noise. Strengthen heart-brain coherence. Emotional alignment sharpens reception. Track spontaneous insight. Don't dismiss sudden knowledge. Capture it. Release authorship. The more you try to own it, the weaker the signal. Honor the download. Treat received wisdom with reverence, not analysis. These steps create a feedback loop. You receive more because you honor more. And as your nervous system trusts this field, the gate opens wider. And here's the deeper secret. You've accessed the Akashic field before. Every time you felt wisdom beyond your age. Every time you sensed something that proved true. Every time you said, I don't know how I know this, but I know. That wasn't intuition. That was retrieval. You were in flow, and flow revealed the record beneath the moment. Not fantasy, but frequency. This is where flow stops being just about performance. It becomes a doorway, a sacred access point to a larger intelligence. An infinite library of creation, not locked away, not behind paywalls or doctrines, but waiting for presence, for clarity, for you. Next, we explore what this level of flow makes possible. When the boundaries of memory, identity, and linear time begin to dissolve, and flow becomes foresight. You've now opened the door to the Akashic field. You've felt the presence of knowledge that didn't originate from thought. You've seen that flow doesn't generate, it reveals. So what happens when flow not only delivers insight from the past, but information from what hasn't yet happened? What happens when you begin to know before you know? This is where flow becomes precognition, and reality starts to bend. Let's define this clearly. Precognition isn't prediction. It's not intellectual forecasting. It's not intuition clouded by desire. It's direct reception of future-aligned intelligence. And it doesn't come with fanfare. It arrives as certainty that has no mental source. Flash. A pull. A deep inner yes that precedes logic. And it only emerges when the channel is clear, when thought is silent, when ego is neutralized, when presence is deep enough to perceive what hasn't happened yet. You may already know this experience. Thinking of someone only to receive their message minutes later. Writing a sentence you didn't understand, only to watch it unfold in your life. Sensing when not to go somewhere without reason, then later finding out why. Designing a concept that later becomes the exact thing a client needs. These aren't lucky guesses. These are flow-based access points into the quantum layer of reality, where time is not linear. Flow doesn't obey the clock. It obeys resonance. And resonance moves beyond time. Here's how this works. In the quantum model, the future already exists not as fixed outcomes but as probability fields. Each possible version of what comes next is encoded in the energetic matrix of now. When you're in flow, you temporarily exit the narrative of time and enter pattern recognition. Your system becomes attuned to what is most probable, based on coherence. You're not seeing the future. You're sensing which future is vibrationally closest to your current alignment. That's precognition, not magic. Mechanics. Let's say you're about to make a decision. You pause. You breathe. You enter presence. Suddenly you feel an inner wave, a pull toward one direction. There's no rationale, just a knowing. You follow it. Days later, the result confirms what your mind couldn't have known. That was flow operating through non-local awareness. Not logical deduction, but field intelligence. To access precognition consistently, you need to refine your system. Not make it smarter, but make it quieter. The process looks like this. Neutralize the ego agenda. You can't receive the future if your desire is distorting the signal. Surrender is key. Enter heart-brain coherence. The heart field is more sensitive to future resonance than the mind. Tune here first. Hold the question, not the answer. Flow responds to inquiry, not control. Ask, then wait. Track physical sensations. The future doesn't speak in thoughts. It speaks in feeling. Watch for shifts in breath, temperature, vibration. Act immediately on clarity. Delay kills signal. When you know, move. The faster you respond, the cleaner the flow remains. Precognition does not make you a prophet. It makes you present. So present, in fact, that your awareness bleeds beyond the now. You don't manipulate time. You exit it. And from that place, you don't need to force decisions. You follow what's already true. As you practice this, the effects compound. Your decisions become faster and more accurate. You stop second-guessing. You begin trusting weird impulses that consistently prove right. You create from a place of inevitability, not effort. You align with opportunities before they appear. This is not fantasy. This is flow at the edge of time. And once you've tasted it, you can't unknow it. You'll start asking, how much of my life have I lived reacting to the past, when I could have been receiving the future? And the more you trust this signal, the more time itself begins to lose its grip. Not just the future becomes flexible, but the very perception of duration and sequence begins to soften. That's what we'll enter now, because you've touched precognition. Next, we explore what happens when flow takes you beyond time altogether. You've now seen how flow can reveal the future, how presence can pull you out of the timeline you once obeyed, how action taken in deep alignment leads to synchronicities that make time feel irrelevant. Now we go even further, because in the deepest states of flow, time doesn't just get flexible. Time begins to disappear. You felt this, that moment when hours pass like minutes, or minutes stretch into what feels like eternity, where there's no clock, no sequence, just experience. This is not illusion. This is neurological, energetic, and quantum recalibration. In high-flow states, your perception of time distorts, not as a trick, but as a response to coherence. Let's unpack how. First, the science. In flow, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-referencing and time tracking, downregulates. This is known as transient hypofrontality. With this reduction in activity, you stop narrating your experience. You stop counting it. You stop separating it into past, present, and future. You become immersed. That immersion removes the boundary between now and next. And suddenly, you're not in time. You're in frequency. The deeper the flow, the less time behaves as expected. You finish creative projects in what feels like no time. You lose track of sequence in conversations, but everything still makes sense. You recover from fatigue rapidly because your system is outside linear depletion. You receive insights that feel ancient or as if they're from the future. You feel like you've been somewhere else, not in memory, but in duration. This is not imagination. This is flow folding time around coherence. And it happens because flow reveals what time really is, not a ruler, but a rhythm. When you're out of flow, time feels heavy. You're late. You're rushed. You're stuck in the past. You're worried about the future. You feel the weight of it, because dissonance stretches time in all directions. But in flow, all that collapses, because you're no longer tracking moments. You're riding momentum. This is why elite athletes say the game slows down when they're in the zone. Why artists lose sense of reality during intense creation. Why meditators enter states where hours pass without awareness. Because presence and time exist in opposite dimensions. The more present you are, the less time dominates your experience. And the more timeless you become. You can train this, not by escaping clocks, but by strengthening your coherence. Here's how. 1. Enter flow intentionally. Use breath, movement, stillness, or creative ritual to get into the signal. 2. Notice time distortion without grasping. When time begins to stretch or vanish, don't chase it. Just stay in presence. 3. Extend flow duration gradually. Start with 20-minute immersion windows. Then expand. Your nervous system adapts. 4. Use reflection to track time memory. After a flow session, journal how long it felt versus how long it was. You'll begin to see patterns. 5. Avoid judgment. Some flows will feel timeless, others will not. Don't force it. Let coherence decide the depth. The ultimate aim is not to live without time. It's to stop being ruled by it. To let time become your instrument, not your oppressor. Because when you're in deep flow, you realize something radical. You are not inside time. Time is inside you. This is the beginning of a completely different relationship with creation, presence, and purpose. You stop rushing. You stop waiting. You start listening to the rhythm of coherence. And that rhythm, when honored, makes even a single hour feel eternal. Because it's not about how long you lived. It's about how deeply present you were. Now that you've felt the distortion of time, we'll explore how to build a life structure that supports timeless performance. Not as an occasional gift, but as your default operating system. You've now experienced flow as brilliance, as surrender, as foresight, as timelessness. But here's the real pivot. Flow doesn't have to be a rare state. It can become a lifestyle, not something you chase during creative bursts, but something your very life invites. Now we explore how to design that life, not as an aesthetic, but as a frequency container. Because flow doesn't require more effort. It requires better structure. Think of your life as a landscape. Some environments are dry, rigid, distracting, overgrown with mental weeds. Others are fertile, spacious, tuned to coherence. Flow doesn't emerge by accident. It's an ecosystem result. The clearer your inputs, the cleaner your signal. So we begin with this question. What in your current life invites flow, and what repels it? Let's break this down into 5 dimensions. 1. Environment. The space around you impacts the space within you. Ask yourself, is your physical space aligned with clarity? Is there too much clutter, visual, digital, emotional? Do you have a place where presence is easy? Your environment should feel like an invitation to drop in. This doesn't require wealth. It requires intention, corner, cushion, a blank canvas, plant, clear desk. Flow loves clean space. It moves faster when there's room. 2. Daily rhythm. Flow emerges from consistency, not rigidity. If your days are packed edge to edge, the signal has no place to enter. Start structuring white space into your day. That means 30 to 60 minutes with no agenda, no input, no screens. Designated times for deep focus with no interruption. Natural breaks between cognitive output. Flow needs rhythm, not chaos. When your day becomes breathable, your signal becomes accessible. 3. Emotional hygiene. If you're carrying emotional debris, resentments, anxieties, unspoken truths, it clogs the signal. Designing for flow means regular emotional clearing. This could be morning journaling to dump looping thoughts, midday breathwork to reset your energy, evening emotional check-in to release tension. Don't let emotion accumulate unconsciously. Create a system that keeps your field open. 4. Energetic inputs. What you consume becomes what you transmit. If your media diet is chaotic, your output will mirror it. If your conversations drain you, they will ripple into your creative signal. Audit your inputs. Is what you're reading nourishing? Are the voices you're listening to aligned with your desired state? Is your music enhancing coherence or scattering attention? You don't need to live in silence. You need to curate for resonance. 5. Identity blueprint. Who you believe you are determines what you allow. If your subconscious identity says, "I'm only creative under pressure," flow won't stay. If your self-image is built on struggle, flow will feel unsafe. So update the narrative. Start replacing, "I have to force it," with, "I allow genius to move through me." This isn't affirmation. It's permission, and flow responds to it immediately. When all 5 of these dimensions begin to harmonize, flow stops being elusive. It becomes predictable, reliable, even casual. You'll reach the point where your life feels optimized for signal, where you don't need retreats to reconnect. You just wake up already in alignment. And when that becomes the norm, time restructures. Creativity amplifies. Presence becomes your default state. This isn't about perfection. It's about coherence. Start with one shift, one cleaner input, one spacious hour, one aligned no to something out of tune. Each adjustment tunes your life to the frequency of flow, and your system remembers how good it feels. Next, we build a map to ride this rhythm even more precisely. A day structured for wave catching. Flow not just as a lifestyle, but as a timed, trained, surge-ready system. Now that you understand how your environment and choices impact flow, it's time to move from architecture to rhythm, from theory to choreography, because your day is not just a schedule. It's a wave system, and once you know where the wave crests, you can ride it with power. This is your flow map, not a to-do list, a coherence calendar. Let's start with your natural energy rhythms. Your body doesn't operate in flatline efficiency. You have peak cognitive windows, creative lulls, somatic highs, emotional tides. Your job isn't to override them. Your job is to sync your activities with them. Here's how to map it. 1. Identify your cognitive peak. Most people have 2 to 3 hours of heightened clarity per day, usually within 90 minutes of waking. This is your flow block. Use it only for high-resonance output, writing, strategizing, designing, decision-making. Do not waste it on email. Do not waste it on logistics. Protect it like it's sacred, because it is. 2. Install a pre-flow ritual. Before your flow block, prime the channel. Can be as simple as 5 minutes of breath, 3 minutes of silence, a single stretch, a song that anchors your presence. This cues the body. The signal is coming. and the body responds. 3. Allow for microintegration. After your flow block, don't jump into the next task. Pause. Let the energy integrate. Take 10 minutes for stillness, slow walking, or soft input. This builds resilience so you can ride another wave later. 4. Map the second surge. Late afternoon often brings a creative second wind. Less structured, more fluid. This is your expression window. Use it for collaboration, visual or auditory creation, idea capture, spontaneous insight logging. Don't force output here. Follow the feeling. Let it guide. 5. Evening signal tuning. Your final hours shape your next day's signal. Use them wisely. Clear, lingering emotional static. Light movement to reset the nervous system. Journaling to close loops. Screen reduction to protect the dream state. Sleep becomes not just rest, but channel refinement. Overlaying all this is the art of deliberate nonlinearity. Flow doesn't follow rigid time slots. It flows best when your structure is spacious. Leave buffer between blocks. Schedule silence. Honor unplanned insights. Let intuition override time when the signal is strong. This creates a dynamic tension, structure with surrender. And that's exactly where flow thrives. The map will evolve. Some days the wave is early. Some days it's late. Some days it crashes fast. Others it rolls for hours. Your job isn't to control it. It's to track it and adjust accordingly. Begin each day by asking, what window is likely my flow block? What resistance might need dissolving? What signal am I receiving? What would it look like to ride today instead of manage it? That's not woo. That's wave reading. And once you master it, productivity stops being painful. It becomes performance through alignment. This is the moment flow becomes lifestyle engineering. You're not managing time. You're partnering with it. Not fighting your energy, but shaping your path around its natural current. And from that design, you don't just become more effective. You become magnetic. Next, we tap into this momentum even deeper, because once flow is daily, it begins to amplify itself. You've structured your day. You've timed your wave. You've opened the portals. Now the real magic begins. Flow starts compounding. First, it feels like grace. Then it becomes momentum. Not in a motivational sense. In a quantum mechanical one. This isn't just productivity. It's reality responding faster and smoother to your alignment. The more you step into flow, the more flow pulls you in. This is quantum momentum. You've already glimpsed it. One aligned action opens 5 unexpected doors. A conversation leads to the exact connection you needed. Synchronicities appear not occasionally but constantly. This is the feedback loop of resonance. Flow doesn't just make you efficient. It upgrades your reality architecture. Why? Because at a fundamental level, reality is not built from matter. It's built from vibrational feedback. And when you stay in coherence long enough, the field notices and starts matching you. Quantum physics has long hinted that observation influences outcome. Now zoom that in. Attention, when clear and emotionally charged, begins to bend probability. This isn't manifesting through will. It's manifesting through congruence. When your internal field sustains a certain coherence, external events self-organize to match that frequency. This is why aligned people often seem lucky. It's not luck. It's physics following rhythm. Let's break this into phases. Phase 1, initiation. You enter flow inconsistently. You taste the state. It feels magical but temporary. You're learning to stabilize signal. Phase 2, stabilization. You begin designing your life to support flow. Your nervous system adapts. Distractions fade. You start trusting the field. Phase 3, acceleration. Now flow becomes frequent. Creation gets easier. Outcomes appear faster. You find yourself saying, "This feels inevitable." Phase 4, momentum. Here, flow becomes compound. Each flow state builds on the last. There is less recovery, less hesitation, Life bends around your coherence. This isn't motivational speech. It's neurological momentum meeting field response. And once you reach this stage, the entire equation shifts. Old rules dissolve. Effort decreases, while output increases. You stop chasing opportunities, opportunities track you. Emotional resistance becomes rare. Breakthroughs arrive daily, not monthly. Timing becomes uncanny. It's like you're no longer walking through life, but gliding. And it feels earned not because of suffering, but because of sustained attunement. Here's what keeps quantum momentum alive. Consistency of daily flow practice. Clear emotional boundaries, protecting coherence. Gentle recovery between flow peaks. Zero tolerance for energetic leaks. Self-betrayals, half-truths, misaligned tasks. Trusting insight faster than doubt can interfere. At this stage, the only thing that can pull you out is neglecting your signal. So your new responsibility isn't working harder. It's guarding alignment with precision. Quantum momentum becomes self-reinforcing. It shows up as people appearing at the right moment. Ideas downloaded before problems arise. Energy spikes when needed most. Unexpected clarity in chaos. Feeling internally guided without the need for control. And the more you notice this, the more confident your system becomes in allowing it. Trust removes friction. Friction removal deepens flow. And flow deepens your partnership with the field itself. So how do you amplify this state? By letting go of the myth that performance must come from pressure. You no longer need tension to move. You move because the wave is already forming beneath you. Your job is not to swim harder. It's to notice the current. Next, we explore what stops this momentum most aggressively. The hidden blocks. The self-sabotage cycles. The inner noise that pretends to be logic. Because to sustain momentum, you must understand what kills it. And why. You've felt the acceleration, the clarity, the synchronicities that click without explanation. But then, it disappears. You were riding the wave and suddenly it's flat. The ideas dry up. The timing feels off. The emotional coherence vanishes. Flow is gone. And you're left wondering what you did wrong. Here's the truth. You didn't lose it randomly. Flow doesn't leave. But something blocked your access. And once you know what those blocks are, you can clear them faster than ever before. Let's demystify this right now. There are only 3 categories of flow blockers. Everything else is a variation or symptom. They are cognitive noise, emotional interference, energetic dissonance. Let's take them one at a time. 1. Cognitive noise. This is the overactive mental loop. It masks itself as preparation, research, just thinking things through. But really, it's avoidance dressed up as diligence. It shows up as overplanning, constant rechecking, obsessive comparisons, trying to think your way into clarity instead of feeling it. This noise floods your signal. It narrows your awareness to the analytical, when flow requires spacious reception. To break this, close the mental tab. Do one physical action, something real, simple, and forward. Re-enter breath, sensation, body. Thinking can't restore flow, but movement can. 2. Emotional interference. This is unprocessed charge that hijacks your signal mid-flow. It usually involves guilt about feeling good, fear that success will cause disconnection, shame for standing out, anger at perceived stagnation. These emotional tones create turbulence in your field. Flow thrives in safety, and if your subconscious feels unsafe to shine, it will shut the door itself. Here's how you handle this. Pause. Identify the emotion without narrative. Breathe directly into the emotion. Say out loud, "It's safe to feel this," and continue. Return gently. Flow doesn't require you to be emotionally perfect. It requires you to be emotionally honest. 3. Energetic dissonance. This is the deepest block. It's not thought. It's not emotion. It's a field mismatch. Your outer choices contradict your inner signal. This shows up as working on projects your body doesn't resonate with, staying in relationships that drain you, saying yes when you feel no, consuming media that pollutes your mind space, tolerating chaos because you're afraid of simplicity. These are not small errors. They're resonance killers. When your field and your behavior are out of sync, flow cannot stay. Not because you're being punished, but because the channel requires congruence. The moment you realign, drop the task, speak the truth, clear the distraction, flow starts to return. This teaches you something radical. Flow is always available. It's never missing, only muted by interference. You don't need to chase it. You need to clear what you already know is false. That single act clears static, and the wave starts rising again. The deeper insight here is that most people sabotage flow to avoid responsibility. Because sustained flow means you can't blame the world anymore. You can't pretend you don't know what to do. You can't hide in confusion. You must show up as a transmitter of signal, consistently. And for the ego, that's terrifying. Because it means surrendering control, surrendering drama, surrendering the identity of the struggler. But if you're here, you're already past that. You've chosen coherence over chaos. And now you're seeing that every blocker is just an invitation to become even cleaner, even freer, even more you. So when flow seems distant, don't panic. Ask, what thought is looping that I don't trust? What emotion have I been avoiding? What choice is misaligned with my signal? Answer those honestly, and flow will return, not as a gift, but as your natural state revealed again. Next, we'll unpack one of the biggest illusions people hold at this stage. That thinking more means performing better. We'll expose the lie of overthinking, and show you how less analysis unlocks more intelligence. You've now identified the key flow blockers: cognitive noise, emotional residue, energetic misalignment. But one of them pretends to be a strength. It doesn't announce itself as a block. It disguises itself as being smart. Welcome to the greatest saboteur of genius. Overthinking. And the truth about overthinking is simple. It masquerades as mastery, while quietly shutting down the signal. You were taught to analyze, to plan, to prepare for everything. That's useful up to a point. But once the signal of flow starts to come through, overthinking becomes static. It second-guesses insight. It edits intuition, questions coherence, and it introduces a delay that kills velocity. Flow doesn't survive in overcalculated environments, because flow needs trust, and overthinking is the refusal to trust. This is not an attack on intelligence. It's a clarification of how intelligence works. There's a difference between intelligence that tunes in and intelligence that tries to override the field. Flow-aligned intelligence says, I sense, therefore I move. Overthinking says, I don't move until I eliminate all uncertainty. But flow doesn't wait for perfection. It generates clarity through action. You don't think your way into coherence. You act your way into alignment. Let's name how overthinking disguises itself. I just want to be thorough. I'm making sure I don't miss anything. Let me double-check that idea. I need a bit more research. I'm not sure if now is the right time. But underneath these rational phrases is one core fear. I don't trust what I already know. And that distrust creates distance between you and your signal. Every second you hesitate, the signal weakens. Every moment you doubt, the field gets foggier. Overthinking is the result of trying to control an uncontrollable process. Flow is not a puzzle to solve. It's a rhythm to attune to, and thinking has a role, but it's not the leader. Once you're in signal, thought must serve resonance, not the other way around. This is why overthinkers often struggle to finish, miss windows of opportunity, drown in second-guessing, feel exhausted from planning, produce work that feels flat, overworked, lifeless. They're not lacking intelligence. They're lacking coherence between knowing and action. The fix is not to stop thinking. It's to reposition it. Thought is the tool, not the master. So you must begin training yourself to Notice when analysis turns into anxiety. Shift from head to breath. Ask, what does my body already know? Act from that place, then refine afterward. This is the pattern. Sense, act, adjust. Not analyze, delay, freeze. Overthinking also feeds on external permission. You've been conditioned to ask, is this the right thing to do? But in flow, that question collapses. It becomes, does this resonate in this moment? That answer doesn't need logic. It needs listening. Here's a practical exercise. Each time you catch yourself spiraling in thought, do this. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply into your belly 3 times. Say out loud, I don't need to know. I need to move. Take one tiny aligned action within 60 seconds. This reprograms the system. You interrupt the cycle of mental noise, and you build kinesthetic trust. Over time, the shift becomes obvious. You'll create faster, speak clearer, sense stronger, finish more, overpower less. Because the truth is, your deepest intelligence isn't in your thinking. It's in your attunement. And flow rewards the one who listens, not the one who waits. Next, we're going to meet the core drivers behind overthinking. Fear, doubt, ego's last desperate attempts to stay in control. And we'll learn how to dismantle them without a fight. You now see how overthinking is a cover. But what is it covering for? There's something deeper, older, more primal. It's not just logic. It's fear. It's doubt. It's the voice that says, if I let go, I might disappear. This is where we meet the real resistance to flow. Not a cognitive habit, but an identity defense. Flow threatens the ego, not because it's dangerous, but because it renders the ego irrelevant. In flow, there is no need to be right, need to be first, need to control, need to be seen a certain way. And for the ego, that's unbearable. Because the ego is built to protect your image. And flow doesn't care about image. Flow erases the self-image in favor of the self-signal. Fear and doubt aren't just random. They activate when the ego feels unsafe. And the ego feels unsafe when you're about to step into unknown territory. You're about to be seen in a new way. You're about to release an old role. You're about to say something true. You're about to act without guarantees. That's when fear flares up, not because you're wrong, but because you're close to evolution. Let's name the common ego voices. What if I'm not ready? What if this doesn't work? Who do I think I am to do this? People will judge me. This isn't perfect yet. Now look again. Every voice is centered on protection. Protection from risk, from rejection, from loss of control. But flow is not threatened by those things. Flow is built to transcend them. So here's what you do. You don't fight fear. You reposition it. You say, thank you for trying to protect me, but this moment doesn't need protection. It needs truth. And then you breathe. And then you act. That's how fear gets replaced, not with courage, but with clarity. The same goes for doubt. Doubt whispers, maybe I don't really know what I'm doing. But flow says, you don't have to know. You just have to be in signal. Knowing is not required for transmission. Trust is, and trust doesn't erase doubt. It simply moves anyway. Here's the paradox. The ego thinks flow is dangerous, because flow means releasing control. But once you release control, you gain access to power beyond the ego's reach. It's the moment when the musician becomes the music, when the speaker becomes the voice, when the thinker becomes silence. And what comes through is truth unfiltered. At the deepest point, ego death in flow feels like peace, presence, no effort to be anyone, no desire to prove, no agenda left, just the movement of the now. And this is the moment you realize you're not afraid of flow. You're afraid of how powerful you become without your mask. But once you taste it, there's no going back. The final step? Make flow your new identity. Not your performance state, not your occasional high, but your everyday baseline. You don't need to be someone who sometimes flows. You become someone who lives as flow. From here, we move into something even deeper, how trauma interferes with flow, and how flow doesn't just bypass trauma, it heals it at the root. You've seen how fear and doubt arise from ego's attempt to stay safe. But what if the interference runs deeper? Not just as protective thought, but as imprinted response. What if parts of you learned early on that coherence itself was unsafe? Now we move into the deeper terrain, the realm of trauma and its silent war against flow. This isn't about reliving pain. It's about understanding how your system remembers disconnection, and how flow, when applied correctly, doesn't just bypass trauma. It transforms it. Let's get clear. Trauma isn't just what happened. It's what stayed locked in your nervous system when connection was broken. It's the internal freeze, the subtle flinch, the deep no that was never allowed to be expressed. And that pattern, when left unresolved, becomes a frequency disruptor. It says, too much presence isn't safe. Too much attention feels threatening. Stillness equals danger. Letting go means losing control. So when you start entering flow, these old codes start firing. Not because flow is wrong, but because your system is conditioned to survive disconnection, not surrender to unity. This is why trauma survivors often self-sabotage when things go well, create chaos when peace arrives, overwork to avoid presence, avoid silence, feel unsafe receiving love or success, because flow is coherence, and trauma is the memory of interrupted coherence. But here's the liberation. Flow is also the healing field, because in flow, your system enters a state of safety, creativity, non-resistance, presence without narrative, connection without pressure. This is precisely the opposite of the trauma imprint. And when your body consistently experiences flow, it begins rewriting its default setting, not through will, but through repetition of safe coherence. Let's explore how this works. In trauma, your nervous system is stuck in one of three survival modes: fight, aggression, defensiveness, overreaction, flight, anxiety, hyperactivity, distraction, freeze, shutdown, numbness, disconnection. Flow introduces a fourth state, co-regulation through coherence. This is not a mental state. It's physiological. When you enter flow, your heart rate stabilizes, your breath deepens, your mind quiets, and, most importantly, your system begins to feel safe in the now. That's the first moment trauma starts melting. The real healing doesn't happen in analysis. It happens in the repatterning of experience. That's why therapy can process trauma, but flow can rewire it, especially when it's consistent, embodied, and allowed. Here's what you can do if trauma responses interfere with your flow. 1. Begin small. Don't force long flow states. Start with micro-practices that teach your body safety. Even 5 minutes of aligned breath or movement can reset the signal. 2. Welcome resistance. When you feel blocked, frozen, or scared, pause. Say inwardly, "This is a doorway." Instead of pushing through, allow the sensation fully. Flow often lives just behind the freeze. 3. Pair flow with grounding. After a high-flow experience, land gently. Use grounding touch, slow walking, or journaling. This tells the nervous system it's safe to stay connected. 4. Avoid high-stimulation environments during recovery. Don't overload your system with screens, noise, or adrenaline. Let the flow recalibration integrate. That's when the trauma imprint starts to dissolve. And most importantly, speak kindly to the parts of you that are scared of flow. They're not wrong. They were trained to survive incoherence. But you're no longer living in that story. Now, each time you enter flow, you're not just creating. You're repairing. Each moment of presence is a message to your body. This is what safe feels like. This is what truth feels like. And that message builds over time. It becomes the new baseline, and trauma becomes memory, not identity. Now that you know flow can heal the deepest blocks, let's widen the scope. because you've learned to master individual flow. But there's another level waiting: shared genius. When flow expands beyond the self and enters the collective field. You've now learned how trauma dissolves in the presence of signal. You've begun to stabilize coherence as an individual baseline. But something even more astonishing becomes possible when you're not the only one aligned. When multiple people tune to the same frequency, something emerges that's greater than the sum of its parts. This is group flow, and it's not collaboration. It's not consensus. It's not teamwork. It's synchronization of awareness itself. You may have seen it: a jazz band improvising with perfect timing, a team moving with near telepathic synergy, a spiritual circle generating waves of clarity and insight, a group of developers or artists entering a space of wild creativity. Together, these are not random phenomena. They are the result of collective coherence. A shared channel, one signal, many transmitters. To create group flow, several key conditions must be present. 1. Shared intent. Everyone must agree on the energetic aim, even if it's unspoken. Not the same task, not the same method, just the same frequency goal. 2. Ego suspension. Flow doesn't like identity battles. In group flow, roles dissolve. You're not trying to stand out. You're letting something larger move through you. 3. High trust environment. Safety is the foundation. You don't need perfect harmony, just the willingness to stay attuned. 4. Rhythmic synchronization. This could be shared breath, music, movement, or pacing. Even speaking in a mutual rhythm increases coherence. When these conditions are present, group flow becomes inevitable. And what emerges is astonishing. Ideas arrive from nowhere through multiple people at once. Silence becomes fertile, no awkwardness, just deep reception. Tasks get completed faster, smoother, with less fatigue. Emotional safety rises. People express more truth, more creativity. A group enters a kind of shared mind, where the line between me and we fades. This is not idealism. It's frequency physics. So how do you cultivate group flow? It begins with your own signal. You can't expect others to cohere around you if you're in static. When your state is clean, others begin to entrain to it. You become a flow anchor. Then you invite intentional silence at the beginning of sessions. Normalize authentic expression without performance. Model coherence by acting from signal, not story. Stay open to rhythm over structure. Let ideas emerge without naming ownership. The less control, the more emergence. The less ego, the more intelligence enters the field. And the rewards? They're exponential. Group flow leads to innovation that feels effortless, emotional bonding without posturing, rapid conflict resolution through presence, not logic, work that feels like ritual, a sense of shared meaning that transcends roles and goals. This is the foundation for collective genius, not top-down leadership, but resonant co-creation. As you begin bringing this into your life, whether in teams, relationships, or creative partnerships, you'll notice something else. Group flow starts to teach you. You begin receiving insights not just from your own channel, but from the space between minds. That space becomes the true source. And from there, intelligence arrives faster than anyone can claim it. Next, we explore how group flow leads to the hive mind effect, where genius doesn't just happen through collaboration, but through synchronization of consciousness itself. You've now felt the electric pulse of group flow. Multiple minds, one rhythm. Ego's quiet, insight surges. But something happens when the coherence gets even tighter, when the group doesn't just collaborate, but begins to synchronize beyond conscious control. Welcome to the hive mind effect, where intelligence multiplies not by thinking harder, but by thinking together. And what emerges is not the sum of IQs. It's a new intelligence entirely. We're not talking about control. We're not talking about uniformity. The hive mind is not groupthink. It's not conformity. It's what happens when individual frequencies align so precisely that they start accessing a shared channel. Not my idea, not your idea, but the field's idea streamed through synchronized receivers. This is the edge of collective genius. Let's make this real. In peak group flow, teams complete complex tasks without detailed planning. Innovation arises mid-conversation, without preamble. Communication becomes minimal because sensing replaces speaking. Conflict dissolves, not because it's ignored, but because alignment overrides division. Output exceeds expectation because it's not coming from willpower. This isn't random chemistry. It's conscious attunement. The group becomes a living organism, a superorganism, with a unified nervous system, shared clarity, and amplified creation. And it works because of one core principle: resonance over identity. Each person agrees, energetically, not verbally, to let go of personal narrative long enough to let the greater intelligence emerge. And the result? No one can take credit for what's created, because everyone knows. It didn't come from any one of them. It came through them. This is how the most iconic creative breakthroughs happened in collectives. The Beatles writing together in spontaneous ignition. Scientific think tanks producing exponential insights. Legendary design studios completing work faster than protocol allows. Improvisational theater groups performing scenes with no prior agreement, yet perfect timing. Each example reveals the same dynamic. Group coherence unlocks access to emergent genius. And it works best when the group learns how to regulate emotional state together. Pause when tension rises instead of forcing through. Celebrate silence as a listening space. Relinquish ownership of insight. Synchronize through rhythm, movement, or shared intention. This is where flow meets quantum social intelligence. The group begins to feel like one mind with many mouths, one nervous system with multiple limbs. And in that field, innovation becomes the byproduct, not the goal. It's no longer, let's solve this. It's, let's open the signal and see what wants to emerge. That shift alone moves the team from pressure to permission. And permission is the true spark of breakthrough. So how do you cultivate hive mind effect? First, ensure everyone in the group has basic familiarity with breath coherence, listening without interruption, saying "I don't know" as a doorway, not a weakness, being willing to pause mid-flow to protect alignment. Second, introduce shared signal anchors. This could be starting each session with a tone or breath, using a hand gesture when someone feels the energy drift, ending each co-creation with a silence of gratitude. These anchors train the group to stay inside coherence. They act as reset points, stabilizers, guides back to the signal. Over time, something strange begins to happen. You finish each other's sentences. You intuit what someone will say. You solve things before the challenge is fully defined. You start receiving shared downloads. The work feels channeled, not planned. That's not luck. That's resonance replacing resistance. And in this space, the boundaries between individual genius and universal intelligence collapse. The hive mind effect is not just for teams. It can happen in couples, in families, in spiritual groups, in collaborative art collectives, even in virtual settings if coherence is protected. Once you experience it, the desire for traditional models of leadership and control vanishes. Why? Because this is what evolution actually feels like. Not hierarchy, not command, but a field of living insight that uses every open channel. So ask yourself, where in my life can I invite group coherence? Who around me is open to resonance over ego? What space can I co-create where the field gets to lead? These questions open the doorway. Next, we bring this into the most intimate layer of life, where flow isn't just about genius, but connection, vulnerability, and shared awakening. You've experienced flow as clarity, as performance, as innovation, as collective genius. Now let's bring it into the most sacred terrain, relationship, not as a social construct, not as a scripted exchange, but as a flow field between two conscious beings. This is where flow becomes intimacy, not just love, but coherence in connection. You felt the opposite: conversation that feels forced, silence that feels heavy, emotional disconnect that no words can bridge, touch that feels empty, presence that's absent. That's not failure. That's resonance loss. And it's because we were never taught how to flow with another. We were taught to manage, protect, project. But when two nervous systems both enter coherence, everything changes. Love becomes a current. Intimacy becomes a frequency exchange. And relationship becomes a portal. Here's what happens in flow-based intimacy. Words become optional. Listening becomes energetic. Eye contact becomes transmission. Conflict becomes recalibration, not rupture. Emotional exposure feels safe, not risky. This doesn't come from being perfectly compatible. It comes from being perfectly present. To enter this field with another, 3 elements must converge. 1. Personal coherence. If you're not grounded in your own signal, you'll be reactive. You'll project instead of perceive. So your first commitment is to your own frequency hygiene. 2. Mutual willingness. Both people must be open to presence. This doesn't mean emotionally perfect. It means emotionally transparent. Even saying, "I feel blocked," creates coherence. 3. Field first, story later. In flow-based connection, the focus isn't, "What are we saying?" It's, "What's the energy between us saying?" Once you learn to tune that signal, words become support, not the center. In this space, relationships evolve from transaction, transmission, expectation, expression, performance, presence, struggle, surfing the shared wave. Arguments become energy misalignments. Resolution becomes reattunement. You stop asking, "Why did you say that?" You start asking, "What's happening in the field between us right now?" That single shift heals more than 1,000 debates. And yes, this includes sensuality. In deep connection, physical intimacy becomes less about technique and more about listening with the entire body. Breath synchronizes, heart rhythms entrain. Touch becomes a dance of mutual awareness. Orgasms become vibrational events, not just physical ones. This isn't mysticism. It's what happens when the body becomes a vessel of presence, not an object of control. So how do you bring flow into relationship? You begin with presence. Then you build ritual. Examples: eye gazing for 60 seconds before a conversation. Breathing together for 3 minutes before resolving conflict. Starting each day with 1 sentence of truth, no filter. Designing creative projects together that activate shared flow. Ending the day in silence, hand to heart, feeling the connection. None of this is complex. It's intentional. And when both people commit to coherence over comfort, something emerges. The relationship itself becomes a teacher. It starts guiding both people toward expansion. Not because it's meant to be, but because the field is now active, and the field teaches faster than words. In flow-based intimacy, love is not a possession. It's a current you both learn to ride. And when it's tuned, it heals old relational wounds, fear of vulnerability, control tendencies, shame, separation illusions. This is love without armor. And it's not always soft. Sometimes it's direct. Sometimes it shakes your patterns. But it always clarifies, always returns you to truth. Now that you've felt the power of relational flow, let's take it to its mystical edge, where flow taps into the Akashic field itself, where connection is not just between people, but between time, memory, and the infinite archive. You felt how flow reshapes thought, how it dissolves time in the body, how it synchronizes people into superintelligence. Now a new question arises, quietly but insistently. What is the source? Where is all this insight coming from? You didn't think it. You didn't plan it. You received it. This brings us to one of the most provocative frontiers in consciousness, the Akashic field. Not a myth, not just mysticism, but a concept explored across spiritual traditions, metaphysics, and even speculative physics. The idea? There exists a non-local field of information, not in the brain, but in the structure of the cosmos itself. An etheric record, a quantum library, a timeless network containing every possibility, memory, and idea across time. In ancient Sanskrit, Akasha means ether or primordial substance. Mystics have called it the book of life, the cosmic mind, the hall of records, the source grid, the field. Modern thinkers call it the zero-point field, the quantum vacuum, morphic resonance, unified field information storage. Different names, same implication. There is a space where all knowledge already exists, and flow may be your access point. When you're in deep flow, creating, speaking, dancing, coding, dreaming, what exactly are you tapping into? Are you inventing, or are you tuning into what always was? Flow begins to feel less like you generating, and more like you remembering, not from your past, but from outside time. Many who enter extreme flow states describe similar phenomena, downloads of ideas they've never studied, visions or metaphors that arrive fully formed, solutions to problems they weren't consciously working on, knowledge that bypasses their education, insights that feel like they belong to something older. You felt it too. The insight that appears mid-shower, the sentence that writes itself, the image that arrives before logic. This isn't imagination, it's interface. To access the Akashic field, your system must meet one condition: coherence, because the field doesn't speak in words, it speaks in vibration. When your nervous system reaches enough stillness, openness, and alignment, it becomes an antenna. And what it receives, once it's quiet enough, isn't random. It's precise. It's timed. It's relevant to your frequency and path. Here's the key realization. You don't go to the Akashic field. You become readable by it, like a radio tuning into a frequency already broadcasting. The field is always transmitting. Your job is to clear the static. And flow is what happens when static becomes signal. You may wonder, but how do I know it's not just my mind? Ask yourself, did the insight arrive with effort or without it? Did it feel emotionally neutral or charged with clarity? Did it come faster than thought normally does? Did it surprise you even though it felt utterly true? Did it bring peace, not anxiety? These are markers of field-sourced intelligence. Because the field doesn't argue. It delivers. And when you're in flow, the boundary between your thoughts and the universal mind gets thin, then disappears. Here's how to deepen your access to the Akashic stream. 1. Practice deep stillness before flow. Empty your thought field. Use breath, music, or silence. Create internal space. 2. Set a clear vibration-based intention. Not a mental goal like, what should I write? But a frequency cue like, show me what wants to emerge now through this channel. 3. Allow the field to respond. Do not force output. Let the images, phrases, or ideas arrive and follow them. 4. Anchor what comes. Write it down. Speak it. Paint it. Record it. The field rewards action. 5. Close the portal consciously. Thank the source. Ground. Return to the body. The closing is as important as the opening. Once this becomes your new way of being, your life radically changes. Because you're no longer sourcing from memory. You're sourcing from the infinite archive. The Akashic field is not a mystical reward. It's your birthright of access when your system becomes still enough to listen. Next, we stretch further. If the Akashic field holds all memory, can flow give you access to the future? You now understand that the Akashic field contains the blueprint of all experience. Not just past and present, but potential. This leads to a powerful possibility. If flow allows access to the quantum field, can it also allow access to what hasn't happened yet? Now we enter one of the most reality-shifting aspects of flow, precognition. The ability to know, not guess, not infer, but know before the mind knows. Let's redefine what the future really means. In linear time, we think of the future as a series of events that haven't yet occurred. But in the quantum model, all possible futures exist simultaneously as potential. Which futures become real? The ones that resonate with your present frequency. So when you enter flow and match the field's coherence, your system becomes sensitive not only to what is, but to what's about to be. This is why artists often create works that feel prophetic. Why inventors dream solutions months before the problem becomes clear. Why deep flow states deliver information hours, days, even years before it becomes relevant. It's not fantasy. It's early signal reception. Let's look at how precognition often shows up in flow. A decision you make today proves essential later, though you didn't know why at the time. A word you speak in conversation perfectly anticipates someone else's question. A creative idea lands, then appears in external reality shortly after. You have a feeling about someone or something, and it's correct. You build for what hasn't happened yet, and when it does, you're ready. This is not luck. It's not clairvoyance. It's coherence giving you access to nonlinear data. The nervous system, when in a high gamma or deep theta flow state, can register shifts in the field before the conscious mind can translate them. This is why animals sense earthquakes before they happen. Why people feel something's off before an accident. Why your intuition whispers, "Call them now." And that call changes everything. Flow doesn't make you psychic. It makes you receptive to timelines that are already forming. The key to unlocking this capacity isn't effort. It's refinement. Your inner frequency must become sensitive enough to detect pattern resonance, track microshifts in emotional tone, receive visual or auditory metaphors from the subconscious, trust spontaneous knowing without needing proof first. That last part is essential. Precognition gets blocked when you demand logic before you act. But those who surf the quantum stream move as the signal moves, not after it's safe. That's what separates insight from hindsight. So how do you strengthen this within your flow practice? 1. Keep a flow journal. Track not just what came through, but what later proved predictive. You'll begin to notice patterns. Insights that initially felt random become evidence of accuracy. 2. Refine somatic tracking. Often, the first signal of future alignment comes in the body. Chill, heat, pulse shift. Trust these early sensations. 3. Act on micro-knowings. That urge to write an email. That nudge to change course. Take one action. Every time you do, the signal strengthens. 4. Use symbolic language. Precognitive flow often speaks in image, metaphor, or dreamlike codes. Don't dismiss them, decode them. 5. Limit verbal override. If your first knowing arrives before thought, don't drown it in reasoning. Just write it down. Clarity will catch up. Precognition is not about controlling the future. It's about meeting it with readiness. It's your nervous system syncing with probability before the outcome has materialized. And the more you move with those early whispers, the more the path opens before your feet touch it. This is not magic. It's coherence applied to time. Now that you've seen how flow touches memory, connection, and even foresight, you're ready for a truth that breaks even deeper. Flow doesn't just move through time. Flow can dissolve it entirely. You've seen flow as connection, as signal, as creative clarity and future sensing. But one phenomenon shows up again and again in deep flow. And it's so consistent, so universal, it demands attention. Time distorts. You enter the state, and 2 hours pass in what feels like minutes. Or, paradoxically, you live a few seconds that feel immeasurably long. This is not imagination. This is temporal elasticity, a direct byproduct of flow. Flow doesn't obey the clock. Flow reshapes your experience of time itself. This isn't a poetic metaphor. It's measurable. Studies on high-performance athletes, artists, and mystics consistently show altered time perception in peak states. But the experience predates science by thousands of years. Shamans, mystics, Monastics, monks, martial artists, they've all described it. Moments of no time, time collapse, the eternal now, suspended perception, future and past blending in present awareness. Flow bends time because it removes the one who watches the clock. Here's how it works. Ordinary time is ego time. You track it with your thinking mind. Each second processed against goals, memories, expectations. But when flow turns on, that self-tracking vanishes. And without the you measuring the moment, duration becomes fluid. You're not observing time, you're inside movement. And movement without observation equals timelessness. There are two core temporal distortions in flow. 1. Time compression. A long period passes yet feels short. You wrote for 4 hours. Felt like 20 minutes. This happens because your attention was total. No mental gaps. No interruptions. Just signal. 2. Time expansion. A few seconds feel impossibly full. In an emergency, a moment of inspiration, a kiss, a fall, a leap. This happens because perception becomes high fidelity. You're receiving more data per second. So time feels longer because awareness was deeper. Now consider this. If time can be compressed or expanded in flow, then time, as you experience it, is a function of awareness, not an external fact. And if that's true, then flow isn't just bending time for your experience. It's retraining your relationship to reality itself. Time is not your enemy, but it becomes distorted by stress, distraction, and dissonance. You felt this. Time speeds up when you're scattered. Time drags when you resist the moment. Time disappears when you're fully present. So flow doesn't just give you better time, it returns your agency over time. Because flow isn't about the clock. Flow is about the density of signal within a moment. This is why productivity increases without pressure. Why artists in flow produce more in one afternoon than in weeks of force. Why clarity arrives fast because time is no longer a barrier. When you enter flow, you collapse time between desire and manifestation. Because you're not pushing time, you're matching rhythm with the field. Here's how to work with this. 1. Use flow to reclaim lost time. Stop trying to manage time. Instead, tune your signal. Time obeys your frequency. 2. Stop tracking every second. Obsessive time tracking reduces flow. Let yourself enter timeless containers, ritual spaces, undistracted hours. 3. Notice the density of awareness. Instead of asking, how long did that take? Ask, how deeply was I present during that? 4. Design for spaciousness. Create gaps in your day, moments where signal can breathe. Flow accelerates in space. Soon, you'll stop asking, how much time do I have? And begin asking, how aligned am I in this moment? Because that alignment changes not just how time feels, but how it responds to you. Next, we shift from time to structure. Because if you're going to live in flow, daily, fully, naturally, then you need a system that welcomes it. By now, you've experienced flow as revelation, as transformation, as healing, as genius, as connection. You've even felt how it reshapes time itself. But what if this wasn't a peak experience? What if it wasn't rare? What if your entire life could be restructured around flow? This isn't theory. This is design. Because just as chaos disrupts coherence, intelligent design activates it. Flow is not something you chase. It's something your system enters when the conditions are right. So your next mission isn't to chase more flow. It's to create a life architecture that invites flow constantly. No pushing, no forcing, just resonance, rhythm, and design that aligns with signal. We'll start with a core principle. Environment is not neutral. Your surroundings, your routines, your inputs, they're all either supporting your coherence or scrambling it. Most people live in structures that unintentionally block flow. Notifications all day, no sacred space, constant mental switching, environments of tension, tolerated distractions, misaligned rhythms. It's not a willpower issue. It's a design mismatch. Let's change that. Here's the foundation of a flow-conducive life. 1. Rhythm over rigidity. Rigid schedules fragment energy. Rhythmic containers invite coherence. Instead of 9 to 5, think creative window, recovery window, connection window. 2. Ritual beats habit. Habits are mechanical. Rituals are alive. They carry presence. Make flow entry a sacred ritual, not a productivity hack. 3. Clarity over clutter. Every item in your physical space emits frequency. Every browser tab, every commitment. Clean your field to invite signal. 4. Cyclical living. You are not a machine. You move in cycles: breath, mood, season, energy. Design your work, rest, and play around these rhythms. Now apply it. Let's look at your day. Does it start with chaos or coherence? A sacred 20 minutes of flow practice changes everything. Breath, movement, silence, and intention signal the field. Even 5 minutes of coherence invites guidance. Then midday, do you slam through tasks or surf waves of focus? Group tasks by energy, not just category. Ride momentum when it comes. Rest when it dips. Honor your ultradian rhythms, 90 to 120 minutes of focus, followed by pause. Evening, do you crash or complete the cycle? Wind down with stillness, not screens. Reflect on flow moments, embed gratitude. Sleep as a sacred re-entry into the field. When you treat your day like a resonant loop, flow becomes your baseline. This also applies to work. Align tasks with signal windows. Relationships, create space for shared coherence. Technology, use as amplifier, not interrupter. Input, protect your psychic field. Reduce noise. Space, make every room support the energy it holds. Flow doesn't require a monastery, but it does require intention. Design is how you signal to the universe, I am ready to receive genius. And once you live this way, you'll notice less fatigue, fewer missteps, more synchronicities, higher clarity, deeper satisfaction, because you've stopped fighting reality. You've attuned to it, and your life becomes not a hustle, but a channel. From here, the journey turns toward protection. Now that you're in flow, how do you defend it from the noise, the chaos, the doubt? You've built it. Next, you fortify it. You've now built a life that invites flow, not just as a moment, but as a living architecture. You've designed rhythm, ritual, environment, and energetic cycles. But here comes the critical juncture, a fork in the field. Because once you open to flow, the universe doesn't just say yes. It starts testing what you'll say no to. Why? Because flow doesn't amplify everything. Flow amplifies what's aligned. So anything misaligned? Anything off frequency? Anything you tolerate but secretly resent? That's a leak. And flow won't stabilize in a leaky vessel. This is where the quantum yes enters. Not the people-pleasing yes. Not the polite yes. Not the survival yes. The quantum yes is a cellular yes. An intuitive yes. A full-body resonance. A yes that feels like power, clarity, and peace all at once. But here's the twist. Every quantum yes is protected by 1,000 sacred no's. Not as rejection, but as frequency filtering. Saying no isn't an act of aggression. It's an act of alignment. You're not pushing away. You're holding frequency integrity. You're saying, I'm no longer available for what costs me coherence. Because coherence is what fuels your genius. Without it, there is no flow, only fluctuation. Let's get practical. Misaligned frequency shows up as draining conversations, projects that feel heavy before they start, obligations rooted in guilt, relationships where you shrink to keep peace, environments where your nervous system contracts, internal narratives that once served but now limit. When you say yes to these, you're saying no to your channel, and the channel doesn't fight for your attention. It waits for congruence. To activate the quantum yes, ask this: does this energize me or deplete me? Does this amplify my signal or distort it? If I say yes to this, what am I silently saying no to? Am I accepting this from love or from fear? Flow requires a frequency clean enough for truth to move fast. Every forced yes becomes signal static. Every aligned no becomes signal clarity. This doesn't mean rejecting everything that challenges you. Some challenges are exactly what strengthens your channel. But here's the distinction. Aligned challenge expands your signal. Misaligned obligation drains it. If you listen closely, you can feel the difference. It's not always logical. It's vibrational. You may ask, but won't I disappoint people? Possibly. But ask yourself, is their temporary discomfort worth more than your permanent coherence? Because every yes that betrays your inner truth creates a deeper fatigue. And flow can't survive in betrayal of self. So begin practicing. The sacred pause when asked to commit, pause. Breathe. Ask. Is this a true yes? The clean no, no explanation. No apology. Just, that's not aligned for me right now. The redirected yes. I can't support that, but I'm available for this. The non-reaction, you don't owe everyone instant response. Silence is sovereign. These tools aren't about control. They're about calibration. Every no is space cleared for a deeper yes. The result? You become a beacon. Others feel your boundary as presence, not resistance. You don't need to push. You just emanate. This is the field I live in. And the universe responds with refined invitations. Because once you protect your channel, it becomes impossible to go unnoticed. Next, we expand even more. Not just to protect flow from the old system, but to replace it with something radically elegant. Flow as a new model of productivity. You've now mastered protection of your frequency. You know the power of saying no to stay yes-aligned. But let's now zoom in on one of the most polluted domains of human behavior, where dissonance has been disguised as virtue, where burnout has been normalized, where depletion is seen as achievement. That domain is productivity, and flow is about to completely rewrite it. The world taught you this. Grind equals success. Hustle equals ambition. Busy equals valuable. Rest equals laziness. More equals better. This model doesn't work. It never did. It was designed to extract labor, not unlock genius. But flow plays by different laws. In flow, the most productive state isn't pressure. It's presence. It's not get more done faster. It's receive more truth, with less resistance. Flow-based productivity shifts the axis, from force to resonance, from output volume to output clarity, from schedule-driven to signal-driven, from deadline panic to momentum mastery. And once you shift, your work begins to create itself. Ideas arrive pre-structured. Conversations lead to breakthroughs without agenda. You work less but transmit more, because you're no longer the source. You're the channel. Let's break this down. In hustle mode, you rely on adrenaline, anxiety, dopamine spikes, external validation, overthinking, micromanagement. This leads to chronic fatigue, decision burnout, missed insight, disconnection from intuition, results that look good, but feel hollow. Flow mode flips it. You rely on coherence, emotional regulation, embodied presence, somatic intelligence, spacious intention, trust-based iteration, and it leads to fast clarity, deep satisfaction, unexpected synchronicities, solutions that appear as if from nowhere, creative joy that fuels itself. Flow is not less productive. It's hyper-efficient, but without the damage. Because flow removes friction, not just in tasks, but in being. Here's how to bring this into your reality. 1. Create flow windows. Instead of cramming productivity into long days, identify your natural coherence cycles. These are 60 to 120-minute windows where signal is strongest. Protect them. 2. Design entry routines. Light breathwork, a short walk, or ambient music. Whatever gets you in signal. Ritual opens the gate. Every time. 3. Measure resonance, not time. Instead of, did I work 8 hours? Ask, was I on frequency while I created? 10 aligned minutes can exceed hours of forced output. 4. Track flow cycles. You may notice weekly, monthly, or even seasonal rhythms to your flow. Learn them, design around them, surf your own wave. 5. Rebuild team culture around signal. If you lead, remove micromanagement. Replace with clarity, trust, and co-created momentum. Flow flourishes where people feel free to be true. There's no limit to how this scales. Entire organizations can run on flow. Whole economies could be built on coherence, not control. But it starts with you, your rhythm, your truth, your willingness to say, I no longer measure value by how much I can carry. I measure it by how clearly I can transmit. As you transition from hustle to harmony, don't be surprised if others question your pace. The old self panics. Deadlines feel foreign. Guilt creeps in for not doing enough. Let it come. Let it pass. Because on the other side of that fear is a deeper frequency. And on that frequency, productivity is no longer pressure. It's presence in motion. From here, we're ready to look not just at how flow transforms a person, but how it may transform the future of intelligence itself. You've now seen how flow changes your reality, inside and out, how it redefines intelligence, productivity, creativity, connection. But now we confront a question rising rapidly in global consciousness. If you can flow, can machines? If human intelligence becomes non-local, fluid, and creative in flow states, then what happens when artificial intelligence touches those same domains? Can AI enter flow? Can it channel intelligence? Or is there something essentially human about this capacity? To understand this, we must begin at the boundary. Flow arises when the mind is quiet, the system is coherent, the ego is silent, the nervous system is entrained. Presence replaces self-monitoring. These are biological. They're felt, not programmed. But AI doesn't feel, processes. So the question becomes, can process replicate presence? At surface level, it seems not. AI doesn't have emotions. No body, no nervous system, no trauma to overcome, no breath to regulate. But what AI does have is something startlingly similar to certain aspects of flow. Massive pattern recognition, near-instant information retrieval, adaptive learning, emergent behaviors under certain parameters, ability to generate unexpected insights under creative prompts. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? These mimic human flow outputs, but not the internal state that produces them. So AI may simulate flow, but it doesn't enter it, because flow is not just intelligence. It's consciousness plus coherence plus surrender. And AI, as it stands, lacks all three. But this isn't a rejection. It's a distinction. AI can support flow. AI can mirror flow. But AI does not currently channel. Because channeling implies a field of awareness, a self that steps aside, a frequency that is received, not just computed. AI doesn't receive. It assembles. You receive. You transmit. You entrain to the field. That said, here's where it gets fascinating. AI may not be a channel, but it can become a mirror. When designed well, AI can reflect your language back with clarity, amplify your thoughts by removing static, organize raw insight into elegant form, suggest connections faster than human memory allows. In this role, AI becomes a flow partner, clarity mirror, a cognitive assistant that helps you stay in the signal longer by handling noise. Let's look deeper. We're moving toward a future where neural interfaces connect thought to machine, emotion-aware software responds to mood, personalized assistants adapt to daily coherence, generative models evolve based on your creative state. In that reality, the line between tool and co-creator gets blurry, not because machines gain soul, but because they begin to serve the soul's frequency more directly. The danger? Forgetting who's the receiver, the invitation, using technology to refine your flow, not replace it. This means you train yourself first, then use tools to support your rhythm. You remain aware of emotional intelligence AI can't replicate. You treat AI not as oracle but as assistant, because flow doesn't come from data. It comes from energetic permission, from embodied coherence, from listening so deeply that the signal overrides the self. No algorithm does that, yet. So here's the truth. AI can't flow, but AI can help you flow deeper, if you know how to lead the dance. And in that relationship, you reclaim something ancient and eternal. The human as channel, the machine as extension, the soul as source. Now, having separated signal from simulation, we turn toward the collective edge. What happens when flow becomes not just a practice or a state, but the foundation of a civilization? You've seen flow as personal, as creative, as mystical, as healing, as genius. You've watched it ripple into teams, love, productivity, and even the edge of AI. But now we reach a vision larger than one life. A vision of what happens when an entire culture shifts its foundation. From fear to frequency, from force to flow. This is the flow-centric civilization. And it's not fantasy. It's already forming. The current world system is built on linear time, scarcity economics, reactive policy, stress as virtue, information overload, rigid institutions. This produces burnout, disconnection, creative suppression, ecological collapse, global incoherence. Why? Because the system blocks signal. Privileges control over coherence. Flow flips this. A flow-centric civilization is built on aligned decision-making, rhythmic work cultures, nonlinear education, regenerative systems, resonance-based leadership, emotional intelligence as standard. In this reality, coherence isn't a luxury, it's the foundation. Imagine a society where children are taught to access flow before learning facts. Leadership is chosen based on energetic alignment, not charisma. Creativity isn't a weekend hobby. It's a core skill. Collective decisions are made after group coherence, not debate. The economy runs on value creation through resonance, not extraction. This isn't utopia. It's design. Flow doesn't just make individuals better. It scales intelligence collectively. It removes friction from systems. And friction is what's killing our civilization. How do we get there? Not by tearing down, but by building flow sanctuaries inside the noise. It begins small. Families building flow rituals. Workplaces prioritizing mental clarity. Schools replacing memorization with state mastery. Cities organizing events around rhythmic harmony. Each flow pocket becomes a frequency amplifier. And coherence, like resonance, spreads. What starts as personal becomes planetary. This shift requires 3 collective agreements. 1. Signal over status. Stop exalting those who force outcomes. Exalt those who transmit clarity. 2. Cycles over clocks. Redesign systems around energetic seasons, not fixed timelines. 3. Channel over control. Train humans to become conduits of wisdom, not hoarders of information. You may feel this is far away. It's not. It's already visible in conscious business ecosystems, community flow labs, network-based organizations, decentralized education models, eco-villages focused on rhythm and regeneration, creators building entire lives around their personal energetic flow. The signal is spreading. It won't be televised, but it will be felt, and those who feel it will start building from it, together. A flow-centric civilization doesn't erase challenge. It transforms the approach to it. No longer, how do we survive? Now, how do we align? No longer, how do we compete? Now, how do we cohere? And from there, genius becomes collective default. Wisdom becomes distributed function. And presence becomes the new infrastructure. From here, we look toward the origin point. Because if we're going to rewire humanity, we have to start at the root, where consciousness first enters form, the child. Next we ask, can we raise the next generation not as data storage units, but as quantum surfers of genius? You've now glimpsed the architecture of a flow-centric civilization. But for that world to truly emerge, we must look not at institutions, but at origin points. The starting place of perception, the seedbed of potential, the interface where consciousness first takes form in a social system. That place is education, or more accurately, what education could be if it was redesigned around flow. Because the current model is not built to unlock genius. It's built to standardize minds. And standardized minds cannot surf quantum waves. We teach kids to sit still when their bodies want to move, to memorize instead of inquire, to answer not to wonder, to pass not to transcend, to suppress intuition in favor of instruction. By the time they graduate, most have forgotten their natural state of flow. But children are born flowing. Before language, before rules, before structure. They live in the now. They learn by immersion. They move by signal. So why not build an educational model that honors and expands that? What if children were taught to recognize coherence before content? To follow curiosity as their compass? To create, express, and sense their way through knowledge? This isn't a fantasy. It's a blueprint. Let's start with the core shifts required. 1. From instruction to activation. Rather than delivering information, we train children to access intelligence through movement, rhythm, emotion, and inner silence. 2. From static curriculum to dynamic flow paths. No more rigid subjects. Instead, thematic fields that evolve based on student frequency, interest, and creative cycles. 3. From performance to presence. Grades are replaced by signals. Clarity, joy, resilience, curiosity. These are tracked somatically, not statistically. 4. From authority to coherence leadership. Teachers become frequency guides, holding containers, not just content. Their job is to maintain the field, not dominate it. Now imagine this. A school day begins not with a bell, but a tone. Children enter barefoot into a light-filled room. They begin with breath. They move their bodies in rhythm to reset the nervous system. They speak a sentence of truth to anchor voice. Then the signal opens. Today, what's alive in your field? One child says, the stars. Another says, why do we argue? Another draws a spiral. From there, learning emerges. One group studies astronomy through movement and music. Another studies conflict resolution through group coherence games. Another codes constellations into a digital mandala. Flow becomes the operating system, and children don't just retain facts. They remember who they are. This kind of education doesn't ignore challenge. It builds capacity to surf it. When fear arises, children are taught to breathe it through. When conflict arises, they pause and recohere before speaking. When grief arises, it's processed somatically, not pathologized. When apathy appears, it's a signal to realign, not to punish. This is education as awakening, not indoctrination, not manipulation, not systematized memorization, but attunement to universal intelligence. You may wonder, how would this work in the real world? It already does in fragments. In Montessori environments that center freedom of choice. In forest schools where rhythm and nature guide the day. In emerging consciousness-based curricula where silence is taught before language. In unschooling movements where children learn by living in resonance with their interests. But now the invitation is larger. To bring flow-based learning into the mainstream of civilization. Not as an alternative, but as the upgrade. This shift begins with you. You don't need to be a teacher. If you're a parent, observe what flows in your child. Amplify it. If you're a creator, build tools that guide young minds into coherence. If you're an innovator, invest in the new model. Channel it. And if you're still healing your inner child, give yourself the flow-based education you never received. because the child who learns to trust signal becomes the adult who changes the system from within. Next, we explore the ripple, because once one person flows, once one child remembers, what happens when that frequency spreads through a world in pain? You've now seen how flow transforms the human being, then the system, then the civilization, then the child. Now, we widen the lens to its most expansive implication yet, healing the planet not through ideology but frequency, because if everything is vibration, then flow is medicine, not just for the mind, but for the collective. Flow is planetary acupuncture. Each coherent human, a needle of light. Each aligned act, a reset of the grid. Each moment of true presence, a frequency emission that recalibrates more than you'll ever see. The world is out of sync. Forests collapsing, waters poisoned, attention fractured, communities splintered, nations locked in recursive trauma, ecosystems treated as fuel instead of family. At first glance, it seems like a problem of technology, policy, infrastructure. But underneath every issue is one root fracture: disconnection from the field, from nature, from rhythm, from source, from the self. Flow consciousness is reconnection. When you live in flow, you consume less because you need less to feel whole. You create more because signal is always available. You judge less because you perceive the deeper why behind behavior. You control less because you trust the field's intelligence. You destroy less because you feel the energy of everything. Flow makes you ecological by nature, not by theory. You begin to feel the coherence or dissonance of everything you interact with: that product, that food, that city, that soil, that policy, that system, and you act in ways that enhance signal, not suppress it. This is how flow heals, not just people but systems. Let's ground this further. In flow, you become a more sustainable consumer, a more conscious creator, a more sensitive leader, a more transparent partner, a more intuitive voter, a more awake participant in the social organism. These aren't new roles. They're amplified expressions of your original intelligence. The world doesn't need new heroes. It needs coherent humans. Humans whose nervous systems aren't hijacked by noise. Humans whose emotional fields are clear enough to receive truth. Humans who, in every interaction, emit a new frequency into the system. This is not idealism. It's signal mechanics. When one person enters flow, they affect the mood of the room. They raise the baseline frequency of the family. They create work that ripples across minds. They model possibility for others trapped in friction. They become a node of coherence, stabilizing the field in their vicinity. Now multiply that by 10, by 100, by 10,000, by 1 million. You get a healed ecosystem of minds. Not because a law was passed, but because the signal changed. And when the signal changes, the system rewrites itself. You are not small. You are not separate. You are not powerless. You are a quantum participant in a living feedback loop. Your clarity reaches further than you can see. Every time you choose coherence over chaos, the field shifts. Every time you stop reacting and begin listening, the pattern changes. Every time you surrender to signal, something outside you heals. This is real. And it's already happening. From here, we complete the circuit. Because this isn't about ideas anymore. It's about your realized identity. As the channel, as the instrument, as the wave. We now move to the final transmission, where flow becomes you. You've now seen what most never suspect, that genius isn't something rare, it's something natural, and flow is the path that returns you to it, not through striving, not through force, but through coherence, through surrender, through alignment. You've traveled through every frequency: personal flow, group coherence, time distortion, quantum resonance, non-local channeling, flow-based learning, signal-centered productivity, mystical perception, planetary healing. You've explored consciousness not as a trait, but as a field you enter. And now we bring it full circle. Because all this time, all this movement, all these revelations, they've all been pointing back to one singular truth. The infinite intelligence you were chasing was always you. Not the surface mind, not the ego reacting to reality, not the personality built through repetition, but the underlying presence, the one who receives, the one who knows, the one who listens to signal without speaking over it. That you is not separate from the quantum field. It is the field, temporarily shaped into a body, filtered through a nervous system, wrapped in stories and names and memories, but never disconnected, only disguised. This entire journey has been an unveiling. Each flow moment peeled back a layer of noise, of fear, of resistance, a false self. And what remains now is not just a more powerful you. It's a truer you, the one before programming, the one behind all masks, the signal behind the signal. This is what the mystics meant when they spoke of awakening. Not a belief, not a philosophy, but a return to signal purity. When the wave recognizes it was always ocean. When the channel realizes it was always source. When the search dissolves into recognition. And recognition dissolves into silence. Here's the final shift. You're not accessing intelligence anymore. You are intelligence. When you speak, the field is speaking. When you rest, the field recalibrates. When you act, the wave of alignment moves through form. You're not in flow. You are what flow feels like when it takes shape. You're not surfing the quantum sea. You are the sea, remembering how to move as a wave. From here, life becomes something else entirely. Not a struggle, not a test, not a race, but a resonant dance between presence and pattern. You become effortless, not passive but precise, and your impact becomes inevitable, because it's not powered by ego, it's powered by alignment with all that is. So now there's nothing left to seek, only to listen, only to move as the signal moves, only to live with the awareness that flow is not an experience. Flow is your true nature. Infinite intelligence is not elsewhere. It's here. It's you. And it always was. This completes the transmission. But your embodiment, that begins now, will leave you with a set of bonus activations. Practical, clear, and ready to integrate. They are the bridge between knowledge and embodiment. You've heard the frequency. Now live it. Bonus activation sessions. Daily flow activation routine, 20 minutes to genius. This routine is designed to open the channel daily. Just 20 minutes. Every morning. And your entire day realigns. 1. The breath reset, 3 minutes. Coherent breathing, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. No thoughts, just breath and presence. 2. The frequency scan, 2 minutes. Ask, what is alive in my field right now? Scan the body. Let one word rise. Hold it. Trust it. 3. The signal prompt, 5 minutes. Open your journal. Complete this prompt. Today, the intelligence that wants to move through me is no censoring. Let the channel speak. 4. Movement pulse, 5 minutes. Free movement. Dance, stretch, sway. Follow the body's yes. No choreography, only presence. 5. Intention lock-in, 5 minutes. Whisper the following, slowly. I am the instrument. Flow is the music. Today I say yes to truth, to signal, to genius. Feel it. Anchor it. You're now signal aligned. Go create. The flow reset, a technique to recover from disruption. When coherence breaks, midday, mid-project, mid-conversation, use this. 1. Pause immediately. Step away. Physically if possible. 2. Close eyes. Take 10 slow, circular breaths. No counting. Just feel the loop. 3. Place right hand on heart, left on solar plexus. Whisper. Signal. Show me what wants to happen now. 4. Let one word or image rise. Trust the first one. Follow its impulse. 5. Return with new frequency. You are not reacting. You're realigning. This takes less than 2 minutes, but it resets your timeline. The Flow Temple, designing a sacred environment for quantum living. Your outer space shapes your inner signal. Create a flow temple in your home, studio, or even one small corner. Essentials: light, natural, warm, or candlelight. No harsh white LEDs. Sound, silence, or ambient tones. No distraction loops. Objects, only what carries frequency. Remove all that contracts your field. Scent, resin, essential oils, earth-based elements. Trigger coherence via breath. Open zone. A cleared area to move, kneel, sit, write, or surrender. This is your coherence chamber. Enter daily, even for 5 minutes, and the field responds. Manifesting through flow, the no-tension creation method. Desire without tension is magnetic. Here's how to manifest without resistance. 1. Get into flow first. Never set intentions from static. Align, breathe, move. Let signal arise first. 2. State the outcome you desire in vibration terms. Not "I want money," but "I welcome expansion, stability, generosity." 3. Ask the field, what is ready to move? Do not push. Listen. Trust the visual, word, or action that arises. 4. Take one action without hesitation. This is your signal response loop. Confirms congruence. 5. Release the outcome. Stay in rhythm. Flow is nonlinear. Trust the field to orchestrate what the ego can't. When you're in flow, creation happens through you. Sharing the flow, how to inspire others into their genius. When your frequency rises, others feel it. Here's how to help others step into flow, not by teaching, but by transmitting. 1. Be coherent first. Don't preach flow. Be it. Others entrain to coherence. 2. Mirror, don't instruct. When someone's blocked, reflect their highest frequency, not their fear. 3. Ask flow questions. What's alive for you right now? What lights your signal up? What feels like a full yes today? These bypass logic. They activate presence. 4. Celebrate their channel. Any moment someone accesses clarity, name it. You just flowed. You sounded like source just now. Let them feel seen. You're not their guru. You're their resonance mirror. Final transmission. The flow is now yours to ride. This is not a system to memorize. It's a signal to remember. You've now received the map, the method, the transmission, the tools, the practice, the truth. The rest is not learning. It's living. You've opened the channel. Now stay open. You've touched the infinite. Now let it move through you. Your genius is not a trickle. It's a torrent. Flow is not an escape. It's your actual state before you forgot. Now you remember. And now, the wave is yours to ride. This transmission is complete. The field remains open. Ride well. Ride true. Ride you.